Hello and welcome to Victory Never Sleeps, episode 114. I appreciate getting to talk to you guys this evening. Got a special episode for you today. We've brought on my good friend and colleague, Witan Erickson, to introduce to you a newly recognized Ásatrú Hero King Blót-Swein of Sweden. And we will talk about him tonight, the events surrounding his life and times, and why it's important that we celebrate and remember him and his deeds. But before we do that, housekeeping stuff. Coming up very quickly. Next weekend, we have Freya's Harvest Feast in Montana. That's the 20th through the 22nd. If you can make it, it's going to be fantastic. I am looking forward to it. I'm going to be there. Our folk builder up there, Tyler Heinlein, has put in a lot of effort to make sure we have a really nice event. And I'm pretty excited about it. It's going to be beautiful. The pictures from last year were amazing. So I'm really looking forward to it. And it's been a long time since I've been to Montana. So come on out to that if you can. Following that, in October 11th through the 13th, for the first time ever in New Hampshire, we're going to have the Winter Nights 13. It's going to be awesome. That is the district event for that part of the world. As the number would indicate, this is the 13th year we've been doing that. I've been fortunate enough to be at every one of those. Winter Nights is awesome in general. It's a very powerful time. The Deseer bloat is always really special, and I'm looking forward to that. It's also going to be beautiful. That's the time of year where the leaves are changing there. It should be just spectacular. It should be breathtaking. I'm looking forward to it. Never been to New Hampshire, so that'll be a first for me. I'm looking forward to meeting all of our folk in that part of the country. And if you're listening to this, we'd love to see you there. If you're interested, you'd like to be there, we'd love to have you. Go ahead and reach out to any of your folk builders. They can get you all set up. If you are wherever you are consuming this, be it live, be it after the fact as a video, or after the fact it comes out on Fridays as a podcast, make sure you like, share, subscribe, comment, do the things to spread this by word of mouth. Spreading it organically is the best way for us to reach as many eyes and ears of our folk as we can. And that's certainly our mission. And we'd appreciate any help you guys can do with that. So if you enjoy the show, if you get anything out of it, if you're benefited by it, or if you're entertained by it, either way, or if you know somebody who might be, please get the word out. We appreciate it. Also, if you are listening to this show and you are a heterosexual white person and find yourself in agreement with our worldview, join the Asatru Folk Assembly. We would invite you to join us and be part of what we are doing. We're doing some amazing things, and we can use all the help we can get. We would love to have all of our folk come home to our ancestral faith and our ancestral gods. And we'd love to get you guys on the team and accomplish great things together. So if you're not a member, ask yourself why not. And if you don't have a fantastic reason, then we'd invite you to join. And we'd love to have you. Other top of the hour stuff. Appreciate everybody's generosity. You guys have been awesome with that. The current project we're pushing away at and making awesome progress at this year is paying off Njordshof. It's going to be our first step in getting Freyshof. Freyshof is the Hoff that will eventually service that northeastern part of the country. It's going to be in eastern Pennsylvania or western Pennsylvania or eastern Ohio. And Cliff is a good guy to talk to about that if you guys have any questions or thoughts on that, because he and his lovely wife, Katie Erickson, will be heading that up. And a big part of making that happen in the coming months and years when we get a little bit closer to it. But in the meantime, fastest way to get there is to help us pay off Njordshof. Made awesome progress. You guys have been helping us consistently chip away at that. We're 2 years and 1 month into it, and we've paid off 67.7%. Still have $79,111 to go. But that comes out to less than $104 per AFA member. If we had everybody do that right now, we'd have it paid off today. Anything you guys can do is appreciated. But yeah, if you want to donate, the link is there. Also, in the description of this video is ways to buy us coffees as a way of donating. You guys have been extremely generous, and we appreciate you guys a lot. Think that's top of the show things I have. Before we talk about King Blót-Swein, Cliff, could you set the stage for folks about time and place and the environment that we encounter this story in?
Sure. So it is the mid 11th century when Blót-Swein lived, and Sweden is nominally Christian at this point. The kings and some of the nobility had been Christian for maybe a generation or two. One of the kings who preceded him fought in the Battle of Hastings and died there, which we'll get into. That's sort of what precipitates Blót-Swein coming to kingship. But the people are very much still Asatru, especially around the Temple of Uppsala, where, as I'm sure almost everyone here listening knows, it was the, if not the major religious center of Asatru at this time. And the folk were still very much Asatru, especially in Sweden. The farther from Rome you get, the more likely it was that our ancestors were still practicing their native religion. With a few exceptions, Ireland converted very early, but that was because monks like to sail on rafts. But Sweden had nominal contact with Christianity at this point. The nobility was starting to turn to Christianity for political reasons. Essentially, they, each case is a little bit different, but generally speaking, it was politically and strategically advantageous for them to conform to European Christianity so that they didn't get crusaded, so that they could intermarry with the nobles on the continent and in Britain. And there was I'm sure there was a financial motive for them as well. Because if you don't stay king, you don't stay rich. So that's just all in this period of time where it's after the Viking Age now. The battle of not the Battle of Hastings, but one of the battles in the conquest of Britain by I can't think of his name right now. I'd know this any other time because I'm a nerd like this. The Duke of Normandy, who conquered Britain and subjugated its fine people. Anyway, Christianity is taking over our ways. Yes, William the Conqueror. That is he. Thank you. And Scandinavia is one of the last few outposts. There are some other places in the Baltics and in Eastern Europe that are practicing their traditional ways, but it is a light that is fading.
All right. And so for folks that may not have heard of him before, if you could tell what we know about him and the situation of his reign.
Yeah, of course. So we don't know a lot about. Well, before I get into all of this, I do want to put some thanks out there to our folk builder Chris Savage, who did a lot of research for us on this. He spent the past month really getting as much information about Blót-Swein to me and to Matt. Once Matt discovered that this was a man who had existed, and something that we are trying to do is to identify figures in both modern history and deeper history who we should honor because of the exemplary loyalty that they had to the Aesir. And Blót-Swein is one of those who Matt found, and we talked about him, and we gave Chris the job of digging deeper than we could, and he came up with a lot of the material that I'm going to present to you tonight. So thank you very much, Chris, for that. It really, you did a fantastic job on it, and did it quickly and kept the timeline that you set, which is impressive. Not everyone can do that. But there was a Christian king of Sweden named Stenkil, who was the king in Uppsala and who died in the Battle of Hastings, like I mentioned. Now, this Christian king, though, was tolerant of the Asatru practices because that was, the practice of his people and many of the nobles at that time. I'm not sure, the percentage or how, what the breakdown in the nobility would have been, but those who were serious about their ways, the ways of their father, and about the Aesir were still entrenched in Asatru, and others who, wanted to be close to the king and close to the gold were converting to Christianity. And that was especially so in the southern part of the country. The farther you got from there, the more Asatru Sweden remained. And when this king died, his son Inge took over as king. He was the heir, and he was not tolerant of Asatru and would not partake in the Asatru rituals and sought to outlaw them. The people were not enthusiastic about this, to say the least, and he was removed from being king and fled to West Gotland in southern Sweden. That's like the towards the Norwegian border area. And there's all kinds of conflicting detail. The life of Blót-Swein is in a lot of ways shrouded in mystery, and a lot of the details are lost to history if they were ever recorded in the first place. But he was named king by the people and continued to practice Asatru and did the Asatru rites that were expected of a king for the people and for the nobles that were still loyal to the gods and therefore loyal to King Blót-Swein. And I should point out that Blót is not part of his name. His name is Svein. There's a few variations on how it's spelled in the different sources that we can find. But he maintained Asatru at a time when it was dangerous to do so, and it's unlikely that he ruled the entire nation of what we think of as Sweden now. It would have been a lot more the Uppsala, which is roughly near Stockholm. If you're not familiar with where Uppsala is in Sweden, and that kind of core part of the modern Swedish nation in that part of the world. Down in West Scotland, which is part of Sweden today, it doesn't appear that Blót-Swein actually exercised any power or had any, any recognized kingship down there. We know that he ruled for a time there, and that it appears that there was pretty much a period of conflict in Sweden in that time, because the deposed King Ingi never really went away or recognized the pagan King Blót-Swein in the north. The reign was relatively short. It would be at most about 14 years. The records are spotty, so we can kind of trace from when we know that King Ingi died and when Blót-Swein died, but we don't know exactly when. I'm sorry, from when Stenkill died to when Blót-Swein died. We don't know exactly the times when certain other events happened. He's attested in some of the histories, and there's actually some level of pushback from academic communities as to whether he actually existed or not. I definitely believe that he did. There's no reason for him to be mentioned in the records if he were not there. I think that's true for a lot of parts of history that are poorly recorded, just because it wasn't written down, or because it wasn't something that was highlighted by the ruling class. A century or two later doesn't mean that it did not occur. So, I mean, that is the most important thing about Blót-Swein, is that he returned Sweden to Ásatrú for a period of time. Now, he was eventually deposed again by King Ingi, and King Ingi continued his Christianization of Sweden, unfortunately. But this is a period where we know that the conversion of Scandinavia and of many other European countries was not something that was uneventful. It wasn't something that that the people wanted, and it wasn't something that that the nobility in all cases rolled over on. Now there's some speculation that his name Blót-Swein maybe because he participated in the sacrifices, in the horse sacrifices that were customary at the time. It's not clear if he was the one making the sacrifice or if he got that name for allowing the sacrifice. But it is important that he did that. And this was something that continued in Swedish history for a short time, where the upper class would. There was a struggle in Swedish nobility about what the path of the country would be, about what basically a struggle between those who were in troth to the gods and held that serious in their hearts and in their souls, or by those who had been convinced for one reason or another to convert to Christianity. And it's really important for us to honor people who did this, because so often in modern times we will, face some kind of a struggle as far as, our religious faith. Are we going to do the right thing in the face of adversity, or are we going to go along to get along? It's we talk a lot about wearing your hammer out or wearing your hammer under your shirt. And Blót-Swein, I think, this is someone that we certainly want to learn more about. There's hopefully more that we can learn about him over time. It is also, I think, an indisputable fact that he lived, and that the struggle to keep our folk Asatru, it's something that we should honor. There are other kings throughout history that had done things like this. There are other heroes who held true to their faith, and I'm really glad that we're going to be honoring him and having him on our calendar for days of remembrances, and giving him his just due. It's not someone that I'd heard of before this year, King Blót-Swein, and that's sad, really, because we hear stories of others that that we know the names of. Herman, for example, we just celebrated his day, and he's been known for a long time. He's fabled in history. They make movies about him now and all of that. I wish it were the case with all of the people who tried to stay true to our faith, that they were remembered. And when we toast Blót-Swein in Sumble, which I'm sure has happened somewhere along the line, but when we do that with more regularity, with he being recognized and honored by us, I think that will be heard and will help to continue his legacy and his faith in the Aesir.
So thank you for that, Cliff. I appreciate you showing up and presenting that to folks. When we were first talking about this, the reason I invited you on tonight was you seemed the most enthusiastic about, really looking into this and making sure that he got the recognition that he deserves. As we grow and develop, there's a lot of other opportunity for folk to ascend and be worthy of this status. But as you may notice, so many of the heroes that we've honored with Days of Remembrance so far are recognized because of their opposition to, or their restoring of our faith during the conversion period, where they were fighting against the tide to maintain their loyalty when there was cost to do so. I mean, it's really good to be loyal when you have the freedom to do so. It's also really good to be loyal when it's the cool thing to do. But it's something very special to remain loyal when there's great personal cost, and almost to a man, the people that we recognize for that have, met their death because of it. Certainly the other two most recents that we've celebrated, also kings, Osric and Ainfrith in what would become Northumbria. And it's interesting because their stories are very similar in a lot of ways, but about 400 years apart from Blót-Swein. It's so one of the reasons that we are assured of his historicity, I think that's a word, if not, it should be, is that he's attested in a number of different sagas and sources around the time. scholars like to find reason to pick stuff apart. And in the midst of history, there's a lot of things that are confusing. This one, not so much. He's mentioned and referenced in a number of different places about, with matching things about this period in history and about his life. So he was King Ingi's brother-in-law. So he was also, we don't know his exact lineage, but he was from, a noble house to where he was the queen's brother. He was, a person, worthy of that kind of a regal position. And the description here that comes from the Hervarar saga, I think it's Hervarar Veda, and it's the original Old Norse. The saga tells about his ascension to the throne. It says, Svein, the king's brother-in-law, remained behind in the assembly. This was after it talks about how Ingi was chased out of the royal assembly with having rocks thrown at him and pelted because he refused to honor the Aesir in the traditional manner. And it said, Svein, the king's brother, remained behind in the assembly and offered the Swedes to do sacrifices on their behalf if they would give him the kingdom. They all agreed to accept Sweyn's offer, and he was then recognized as king over all Sweden. So it's disputed where his reign went to in theory and where it went to in practice. Those two things often don't match up in, historically, those two things seldom match up exactly. But so a horse was then brought in the assembly and hewn into pieces and cut up for eating, and the sacred tree was smeared with blood. Then all the Swedes abandoned Christianity and sacrifices started again. They drove King Ingi away, and he went into Västergötland. So one of the things about Asatru kings was their position of kingship went hand in hand with their position as chief priest or as sacrificial priest for the nation that they were in charge of and responsible of. And they would represent that nation before the Aesir in doing the sacrifices, or at least officiating them in whatever capacity that looked like. And their luck in doing so in the Haminya that they built was thought to be, in a lot of ways, the very lifeblood of the kingdom as far as success and prosperity went. So yeah, his stepping in and doing this at a time, in the sagas, it's, again, he got proclaimed king over all of Sweden, and all the Swedes in one fell swoop came back to Ásatrú. And it certainly wasn't that simple, but in some ways it was. When a king would embrace a faith, implicitly all those under his charge would as well. To one degree or another, it brought the whole nation in or the whole nation out. And we see that up until modern times. But yeah, that for a brief moment, however many few years, bringing the nation of Sweden back into loyalty with the Aesir is a really special thing, in a way that he was able to serve our gods in a truly remarkable and unique way. So we're very happy to honor him. We are looking at January the 18th to be the day that we celebrate his day of remembrance, as I recall. It's not set in stone yet, but I think that's what it's going to look like when it comes out. Got a few questions lined up. Before we get to those, I want to go ahead.
It was about 4 years that Blót-Swein reigned. Not sure if it was a little more than 4 or a little less than 4, but about 1180 to 1184.
Yeah, the biggest variance I've seen is 80 to 87.
Okay.
But yeah, I've heard anywhere between 3 and like I said, 3 is not like 6 to 7, but not a lot, but enough to where for that moment in time, a substantial number of the the sons and daughters of the Aesir came home to them, and that's
And
special.
Chris found some more information. I didn't, read his paper verbatim. That would have been perhaps boring. Perhaps it would have been interesting. Maybe I should have done that. There's a lot of good information in there, and we'll put that out. We'll put out some stuff, in a more of a story of Blót-Swein kind of format.
I want to thank G.W. Farnsworth, very frequent contributor to the show. Thank you so much. He bought us 5 coffees. That's a $25 donation. Thank you very much for that. We appreciate it. And Reginald bought us 3 coffees. That's a $15 donation. Thank you so much for that, Reginald. Enjoy the live streams and respect the work of the AFA. Thanks. You're very welcome, and I'm glad you enjoy it. With that, we have a question coming in from Rumble. We appreciate our Rumble fans. We don't often get live questions from there, so we're glad when we do, and we welcome any and all of those we can get.
To be fair, this question's not live. He posted it in the chat or in the comments on the video from last week, saying he didn't get it in time.
All right. I've been misled by my producer, but that's okay. No, I misassumed. Still from Rumble, and we appreciate our Rumble fans. Is prayer similar to the way it is in other religions? Sure. It is, or it isn't, or whatever it needs to be. I think people there are in other faiths that I'm aware of, sometimes there are very specific, memorized verbatim prayers. This is not that outside of the prayer in the Sigdrifamal. That's the one that people remember and sometimes will say. But in most faiths that I'm aware of, there are a lot of different visuals to it, perhaps, or setting to it. But the idea of speaking from your heart to your gods and in a place of reverence and respect is the fundamental of it. And in that sense, it's very much the same. It doesn't have to be boastful. It doesn't have to be theatrical. As long as you are reaching out to your gods in a respectful and pious way with honesty and sincerity from your heart, I think and believe that counts. Probably a lot of ways it's really similar. I imagine that there's some ways it's different. But I know in my own experience and folks that I know, there are, prayers before meal times. There's prayers before bedtime. There's coming before your altar in a moment of quiet where you want to commune with and approach your gods in prayer. There are all kind of varieties of way that folks do it. And there's not, one perfect way that that's done. Do you have anything that you want to add on that, Cliff?
Sure. I think in the etymology of the word prayer is basically to ask. Some definitions will say to beg or to beseech. So in that sense, I don't think that we ever beg our gods. But as Alistair Goethe Matt pointed out, a lot of what conventionally is called prayers isn't really begging either. It's asking for a blessing, perhaps when a meal is blessed, asking a god or a goddess for some recognition. If if we're praying to them to boast about a deed that we did in their honor, or something that we think that we would like for them to see us as worthy of their attention. But really, prayer is just speaking to the gods. The particular content of that is going to vary based on so many things.
Yeah, there's I would urge, okay, when people first contemplate how to practice Asatru, either, theoretically as a thought exercise of, what if, or if they're at a crossroads in their own faith, or if they have left one faith and want to embrace Asatru, you get in a thought process where you want to do it right. And that's awesome. That's exactly as it should be. But it's very easy for that to become paralysis by analysis and, well, I need to research more. Well, I need to have an altar set up, and I don't have my altar set up right now. And when I do, though, all right, like I'm out, but I don't have any incense, so I need to get incense, but it needs to be traditional incense. If you wait for the perfect time, it's never going to happen. The important thing is doing the act of prayer and doing it with sincerity. It can always be improved upon and, get better as it goes. But the most important thing is that first step of reaching out and making that connection and offering prayer to the gods. There's a lot of ways to do it better, but that in and of itself is significant, important, and absolutely counts. Gothi Trent East asks, for the ulterior Gothi, can you explain the term Heiliger Mother that you used in the MeWe post about this scream? Well, I'm going to do my best. As some of you guys know, some of you have even joined me on my Old Norse quest to better familiarize myself with the language and, importantly, the etymology. As I saw in the chat, and rightly so, yeah, that literally means holy man. It's important because it predates the Christian use of the term holy. It comes before. One of the ways that we can find religious terms, ironically, or I think ironically counts, is how Christianity and Christian texts and sermons and concepts got translated into a language that didn't have other words for them before they used Latin or the language of the church. In order for their concept to make sense, there's pre-existing terms that they use. And one of the things when looking for a term to approximate the position of these holy, revered figures of our folk, we're looking for that. I actually found an Anglo-Saxon term that got me onto this, and it was in Stephen Pollington's Elder Gods. There's a pre-existing term that got used to mean saint, but it was a concept that existed amongst our folk before the advent of Christianity that meant, people of great holiness, people that exuded the hymenia of someone with a great deal of holiness. And that term translates directly into the Old Norse as Heiliger. And I think I want to find a usage of it where it's just a noun like that. So far, I'm looking for that spot. I think it exists somewhere, and I think we'll get there, but I've seen it as an adjective. So when the earliest Old Norse were writing about someone who was saintly, and they didn't have a term for it, the term that they would use was Heiliger Mother. And that's basically what it means, and it's the exact same concept. As a matter of fact, that's one of the odd things if you're coming in and you're not familiar, but the idea of saints is probably one of the most pagan elements of European Christianity that's overt idolatry, and it's It's one of the reasons it's awesome, because it's absolutely our thing that was co-opted because our people wouldn't leave that concept behind. Along with the veneration of ancestors and heroes, that's where that comes from. So that's the etymology of where it is. Somebody also mentioned that the root of that is whole. And that was fundamental to the idea of holy as it's come down in every context that you know it, at least in Aryan languages, is the idea of wholeness, the idea of things being right ordered, things being healthy and the way they should be in order with like the right function of things, whereas chaos is a deviation from that. We see that concept a lot, and it even functions through our symbology for our priesthood. The rune, the Rytha rune, is that idea of right action at the right time maintains that wholeness, or that being in line with the proper functioning of earth and of right action. So that's kind of the roots of that. We have a all right. Currently, the AFA's heroes are all of a Germanic aesthetic. Will there come a day when Hellenic, Rodnover, etc. individuals are added as heroes, perhaps with a different term? Cliff, you got any thoughts on that?
It's an interesting idea. So I think it's important, to kind of preface any answer to this question with why Asatru over Hellenism or Rodnovery or, other expressions of Aryan religiosity. And the reason that we're the Asatru folk assembly is severalfold. One, probably the most fundamental for our church, is that when founder McNallen began down this path, it was Odin that he reached out to. And it's not just Stephen McNallen who had this inspiration, if you will. I think that Odin was rousing our folk on multiple fronts. There are others who also, heard the whisper of Odin or were driven to seek him out. Founder McNallen was the one who was most successful. He established a church that is lasting. But there were others who, the Aesir in particular, were reaching out to our folk and rouse this native religion, this native spirituality in our people. So we believe that Asatru is the most perfect of the expressions of Aryan divinity, but it's not the only one, and there's a lot to learn in Hellenism, Rodnovery, and so on. So I don't know that I personally would be opposed to us one day having heroes who were loyal to our gods in the context that they knew them in their place and time. It's not like, it's not like somebody in the ancient Greek world had a choice about, becoming Asatru. They were Hellenes, and that's all there was.
Yeah, it's interesting. As a thought experiment, I'm not opposed to it either. Realistically, in the short term, probably not. And some of that is, there's a lot of work to do to flesh out how all of those pieces fit. And I think that, we could spend decades attempting to do that. And no doubt we would continuously get closer and closer, and it's a worthwhile thing to do. In the meantime, so if we got to a point where we stopped honoring new heroes because there just weren't any left, what are we going to do? Then I think there's a case to be made. I think right now the order that we're doing them in and the focus that we're doing them in on people that are in a very overt sense Asatru is the best practice right now. I think a lot of those other heroes, and some of this comes in with simply a lack of familiarity because our focus is on the Norse expression of our faith. When you get further afield to things that don't quite fit as cleanly, like you mentioned, Hellenics, Latins, certainly Slavic folk, here where the vast majority of our membership currently is in the United States, we have very little familiarity with that culturally, certainly with a lot of the Slavic expression. It's one thing I desperately like to learn more about, and I think it's fascinating. So those people absolutely deserve to be honored, and I would never want to deny them that, and I'm not doing that. But right now, we have a lot of more on the face of it Asatru heroes that need to get their due honor and remembrance from us, and that's where we're starting. But I have no problem with your suggestion eventually at some point. I don't think we're quite there yet, but I think it's really good in concept, and if anyone were to raise a horn to those folks in Sumbul, I would gladly, celebrate that and hail that and appreciate that remembrance. And I think we may see more of that as time goes on. Which reminds me, before I forget about it, if y'all will indulge me in a side note, Kevin in the side, I hope Kevin is still here. He was in the chat a bit ago. If he is, Kevin, if you would email me at mattflavel@runestone.org or get a hold of any of us somehow. You mentioned a man last time when Svan and I were on that you wanted to have us consider for the Heiliger status. And we'd like to do that. We're currently trying to look into and research that man, and you seem to know more about him than we are able to find with our resources right now. So I'd love to hear what you know, what sources you could direct us to, because something that, as Earth would have it, Cliff is the first person to bring that gentleman to our attention for this possibility. And we've been having a really hard time finding out information. So if you could reach out with that, that would be awesome. Next couple of questions. And I'm not sure if the person who asked the question, if Corey is still with us or not. Some folks were suggesting that he is a troll. And he might be. I don't know. But I think his question was expressed civilly, so I think it's worth answering and addressing under the best of terms. And so he asked a couple of things. And Cliff, I'll let you take a swing at this one first, and I will add my thoughts after it. But the question is, how can y'all say you're not white supremacists, but you celebrate actual fascists like Elsie Christensen? Cliff, how would you react to that? Or not would you? It's not theoretical. Cliff, how do you react to that?
So I think one thing that's really important is that we don't celebrate Elsie Christensen because she was a fascist. We celebrate Elsie Christensen. She's one of the people that I was referring to that felt the call of Odin or sought out Odin. I don't know exactly, how the relationship began. Either she felt devoted to Odin and began the relationship that way, or Odin, whispered in her ear and stirred that inside her, and that relationship began that way. But we celebrate Elsie because she was an early proponent of Asatru at a time when that wasn't something that was available to the general public. And that's why we honor Elsie Christensen. So I don't see the relationship between the rest of the question and how we celebrate Elsie.
I don't know how old Corey is, but if he's 30 or under, I absolutely understand where he's coming from, because that is a really toxic thing in our society these days. There is a current in thinking by misguided at best, degenerate elements of society more accurately, to retroactively judge historical figures by the current cartoonish villainy that we've placed upon their political ideologies. I've mentioned before, in the Asatru Folk Assembly, we care a lot more about principles and about right and wrong than we do about politics, because politics are locked in time and place. And when viewed outside of the circumstances, they don't make a lot of sense, and they're very often misrepresented and odd. Politics have everything to do with the current situation one finds themselves in, and they should be informed by your value system, but they shouldn't be mistaken for your value system. Values ought to be timeless. As Cliff said, we celebrate Elsie because she reawoke to Asatru, and she sought to bring others back into trough with the Aesir, and in doing so set about currents that still bear fruit and still bring people home today. What I think everybody needs to realize is political movements that are currently vilified 80, 90 years later are very often nothing like the discussions around the kitchen table of the people who were part of political parties at the time. I think it's not only do I think it's unfair, but I think it's historically abusive. And I think that, the person asking the question, I think that Corey's understanding of fascism is probably very, very different than the Christensen household at the time. I think it's something that we would all do well to look back on with a little bit of grace on political things that either don't make sense to us through legitimate ignorance and not understanding, or at best have been, or at worst have been vilified for nefarious ends by other people and labeled, 90 years later to judge someone almost a century later because your politics have shifted drastically where theirs are stuck in a specific time period. It's just not fair, and it's not a fair way to judge. We don't base your relevance to Asatru based on political things you're involved with at a time, unless those political things are specifically counter to our value system. We have no reason to believe that hers were. So I think I understand why the question gets asked. I think the question misses the point. I think it becomes kind of silly and needlessly contentious to argue centuries-old politics outside of context and outside of understanding of it when evaluating religious practice of today, especially if we don't really know what we're talking about. And I think we run into that quite a bit.
It's interesting too, because I think, you know, you're right. They're like, okay, fascism is viewed as particularly toxic in the modern American political discourse and the modern Western political discourse. And they're not really talking about what existed contemporarily at the time that the people who were proponents of that and their time and place and in their politics of their day. And it can sort of, you know, I can make it, I guess, seem a little bit more obvious if we replace fascism and Elsie in the question with monarchism and Blót-Swein. Like, how can you support a king? He, you know, I don't believe in monarchy. And I think if the question is put that way, it kind of highlights its irrelevance to our religious practice.
Yeah, and the other thing, it's just silly. The concept of fascism wasn't explicitly racial. Some other things might have been, but the term fascist, it's kind of funny. So I think we have a lot of comic book villain versions of political movements of the past that have gone out of fashion or out of favor. And it's silly. And we run into that on a lot of issues. I know issues surrounding the Second World War are particularly spicy, but we run into that a lot of different places. I'm sure different countries have other similar things, which just like we have that about the Civil War in the United States, all of a sudden we put on whatever side we don't like all of our modern things that we dislike. And we act as if they, at the time in the 1860s, were, you know, on our team or on the other team about these current political issues without really having a deeper understanding of where people found themselves and why they did the things they did. People that want to invest the time to really dig into the history, I think that's a very valid and important thing to do if they'd like to. But for the uninformed that just throw out names of political movements as, you know, as insults and pejoratives. And I certainly hope that the future judges us a little bit more fairly than we tend to judge people in the past politically.
I think it won't. It never does. But it's true. I think that this is something I think I've mentioned on this show before. I've certainly mentioned it in conversations with you and with other Asatru, where you know, there's this impulse, I think, in modern culture to assume that we are the best that has ever been. And we can, not me personally, not you, not most of our listeners, but we as Western civilization are very quick to condemn the past, that they were dumber than us, that they were less civilized than us, that they were, you know, meaner and more cruel than we are. There's this hubris that we think that we're the best thing that's ever walked on earth. And I don't think it's true, especially if, you know, if we were born in a different time and place, we would be very much creatures of that time and place. Just like if I was born in France, I'd be French, or at least I'd speak French. You know, maybe I would still be Scandinavian and Irish, but I wouldn't be an American. And it's just, every time a question like that is asked, it really rubs me the wrong way, because there's this built-in assumption of supremacy over the past. This, you know, this question is present supremacist.
Yeah, it's, but like I said, I think it's come about fairly by people who've been, you know, educated in the current environment we find ourselves in. Unfortunately, I think they come by the question honestly.
It's very much encouraged right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's unfortunate. But so this is a good enough time. Let's plug this. We are just starting out on year 3 of the Asatru Academy. We are enrolling students all the time. It is our AFA homeschooling program for our children. Have a little ways north of 30 children enrolled at this point, and it is an opportunity for us to take back the responsibility of teaching the next generation of our families in a way that is consistent with our values, our beliefs, and a better, I don't know, I'm trying to think of the nice way of saying real education and not the false education that we think is very often being served up in the public school system. But worse than that, I think the current public school system in a lot of places can be really, really dangerous and detrimental. And where we're able, we would love to help parents that would like to educate their children at home with our values. We would love to support that as best as we can. And that's what we're doing. Gothi Rob Stam is the dean of the Asatru Academy. He and his staff have put in a lot of work and are doing amazing things with it. As a father, I'm very excited about it. As the Y'all's Harrier Gothi, I'm extremely proud of it. Please consider that if you have children. We have curriculum now K through 6th grade. So taking enrollment all the time. Anytime you're able or you'd like to, we'd love to have you partake in that.
And they are really awesome. Dean Stam and the rest of the staff there are working really hard. My boy is enrolled in the Asatru Academy for his kindergarten year this year, and we are getting the hang of the things that we need to do. And they are backing us up. We're in Pennsylvania, which is a particularly tough state to do this in, and we're I'll be quite frank. Katie and I are a little bit intimidated by all of the reporting requirements and things that the state expects of us to do that here, and the Asatru Academy really and truly is I think the only reason we are able to do this. They are helping us with that. They're helping us navigate the requirements, and I'm very grateful that we have the Asatru Folk Assembly and the Asatru Academy in particular there to back us up, because where I live, it might not have been something that we could do on our own.
Something else I'd like to throw out there on the side. Just 'cause I think it's a really good resource, and it's not AFA specific or AFA proprietary. The Homeschool Legal Defense Network or Legal Defense Association. Nick, if you could find an address for that and put that up for folks, that would be awesome. They are a really, really good resource for anybody who's considering homeschooling, whether you're doing with us or however you want to do it. They're a very good organization. Their advocacy is top notch. Their expertise on this is second to none, and they're a very good and reassuring group to help you really get a handle on how difficult or how easy it is to homeschool your own children and to work through that process. And it's got it broken down state by state. If you have kids and it's something that you're thinking about, it'd be in your best interest to go to their site and just check it out and see what's what, because there's a lot of really good information there. So we are taking all your questions tonight. We would love to answer as many as you have for us about anything you'd like us to talk about. From the Heathen Hammer, is the new Bloat book still in the works? No, it's not. We're working on a lot of material, but we're not at present in line to present a book of pre-made bloats. We are working, and we've talked about a number of different ways to give examples of how bloat's done. And there may be something in the future as far as like altar work things and things that way. We would really encourage everyone to get involved with the Asatru Folk Assembly and participate in bloats with our Gothar at the Hoffs in a more formal way when we talk about actual bloats. But as far as offerings and altar work go, we may very well have some stuff on that. And we also we're talking about maybe even doing some example videos of that kind of a structure. That's currently where we're at with it. So we have a question here, Cliff, that you might be the one to answer. Where? Oh, never mind. Hold on, I was misreading the chat. But to talk a little bit more about Freya's plans, I know folks are curious to narrow down kind of where we're looking and what that looks like, and maybe a little bit about what kind of things factor into that choice. And I think you may have some of the better answers on that, Cliff.
Sure. Yeah. So, it's going to depend on the facts on the ground, of course. So we're probably about a year and a half away, I think, based on our current rate of progress, to being in a position where we can start to seriously look at properties, as opposed to, just browsing them online to keep ourselves familiar with the market, which we do. It's important for us to go into things when the time comes, knowing what's been available, even if it still isn't available now at the time. That way we have realistic expectations of the types of properties and the price ranges, and the rest of that goes into it. Matt mentioned it would be in eastern Ohio or western Pennsylvania. There's also a small chance it'll be in that little triangle of West Virginia that's wedged in between there. I don't want to exclude that from our search area, because if we do, the best possible place, of course, will end up being there, right? And I've, this based on the current distribution of membership in the north of the Thorshof district, I'm thinking it's probably going to be somewhere between Interstate 90 on its northern boundary, Interstate 79 as an eastern boundary, Interstate 70 as a southern boundary, and Interstate 77 as a western boundary. That's a pretty big box. That's like the top quarter of Ohio, the northeast quarter of Ohio, that West Virginia triangle, and a small chunk of northwestern Pennsylvania down to somewhere a little bit north of like the Pittsburgh area. That's where we're going to be looking. That's where, that's going to be in the area where it's going to serve Ohio and Pennsylvania and Michigan and Indiana the best, as far as how people are distributed right now. And Western New York can it's just that little flag tip of Pennsylvania to get across into Ohio from there. So it's not far from there. And that's where the bulk of the AFA membership is in this part of the country, in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana in particular. Michigan is growing though, so it's up and coming as well, and it's actually not very far. I don't know how geographically minded people are, but Michigan touches Ohio there, on the Lake Erie coast. Detroit and Toledo are not very far from each other. So I-90 would be a quick trip for a lot of people in southern Michigan, at least, to get to the area we're talking about. Now, as far as what kind of stuff we would like to have in the Hoff, this is all completely theoretical wish list kind of stuff, so don't hold me to it. We have no idea what the property will be, but as far as honoring Lord Frey, we would like to have some amount of acreage so we can have some green space there. If we don't end up getting that, then it's very likely that we will do some kind of a greenhouse or, indoor garden. I think it'll be really important for Frey's Hoff to have green present there. Frey is he's a Vanir. He's a god of fertility, a god of growth, who brings the rains in the spring, and it would just seem completely incorrect to not recognize that in the environment that we select and set for those grounds. But again, we have no idea what property it's going to actually be. So a lot of that's going to depend on, luck and what we can find at the time.
Yeah, there's a ton of things that go into it. And we always want to make sure that we are being as diligent looking as we can. But there are a lot of metaphysical X factors that go into it. We want to make sure we're doing our part. But whenever we get a new Hoff, I ask regularly at my altar for the God of that Hoff to help guide that process and, help us ensure that we get a Hoff that, would bring them honor, that would, be pleasing to them, that they'd like. And a lot of things move in an interesting way when that process gets started. But we, pick some target things we're looking at. We don't want to be too rigidly bound to them. We have price figures we look at, finding the right price in the right location with the right building and the right land. Those things very seldom all come into play. So a mixture of those things, and it sorts out kind of interesting when the time comes. A couple of things that we need to get us there. We need to first pay off Njordshof, and we're working hard on that. We need to also increase our monthly income by...
It's right on screen, sir.
I can't read it. That's little. 9.6%. I got old eyes. So 9.6%. And that's very doable. And we also, once we get closer, we'll need to build a war chest for a down payment. It depends on what that looks like. It's a lot of variables, but we've got a process now, and we've been very fortunate in the ability to get Hoffs and establish Hoffs. But once we have one, what a lot of people don't take into account, but is extremely important, is we take on an obligation. That is the temple for Lord Frey, and we need to take care of it. So we need to make sure that whatever happens, we have the funds to be able to do maintenance, take care of it, treat it well, and maintain it. And that's the recurring monthly stuff that becomes really important. So we have different figures on that. We try to be very responsible stewards of these Hoffs. It's a big deal getting them, but it's a much more important thing to maintain them and to keep them and to improve them over time. And so we're really dedicated to that.
Something I want to add as far as property details too is, we've had people suggest things that seem like a good idea, but that aren't always suitable for our uses. Like an old hotel or an old school or something like that. And they seem like, okay, they've got kitchens, they've got the square footage. Sometimes they look really beautiful. But what we really want to make sure of from past experience, and just as far as, having everything that we need, we're looking for churches that are still zoned as churches, whatever that means in the particular locality. That'll depend on where we look, exactly what the laws are and what it means as far as zoning. But we have a very, very strong preference for a facility that would be turnkey as a religious facility. Now, anything can change. If we find something different that doesn't quite meet that, we might consider it. But we're looking for churches.
And
or other
I'm saying this to Cliff as much as I'm saying it to the audience, because I was asking our law speaker, Alan, about it myself. That's not always the same depending on where you go. So, yes, something that is a church now or is a house of worship now that is zoned to be a house of worship, we can maintain that when we purchase it. And that's the perfect scenario. But depending, charitable use doesn't necessarily have to have the religious component to it to still have the same zoning in certain counties and certain municipalities, and however that's broken down in the state and in the area we're talking about. Also, certain places are like must grant if the zoning is less restrictive than whatever the current zoning is. So if something's commercial, then if you apply for religious zoning within commercial, then it's a guaranteed thing. It's just a paperwork filing. So if we found the right circumstance that way, what we want to avoid is any kind of, asking permission for something. We would much rather go in with a surety as opposed to with a question mark over whether we can or can't do something.
Yeah, we want to avoid any place where it's may grant, where the city council can say no.
We ran into one spot in Florida when we were looking to where it go around and like 80% or more of the neighbors had to express in writing that they wanted us granted the permission if we wanted to change the zoning. Like the city's zoning on that was really extreme. So there's different rules, different places, and those things are all really important to consider. Anything that's a house of worship that's zoned that way is a turnkey option for us, and that's usually the best bet. But we're not opposed to thinking outside the box. People have suggestions, but we're a little ways away. Say that. I think Cliff does this too. I know that I very often go in and just see what's on the market because I'm excited about it, and it's neat, and it gets the creative juices flowing as far as what's possible. And fortunately, there's a lot of really cool things possible. So I have no doubt there'll be plenty of cool choices when we get closer.
80% agreement from neighbors is a very high burden. For anyone who's had to collect signatures for anything, that number is effectively unattainable. Not even if they oppose what you're doing, just the odds of getting them to do it out of laziness and other factors. That's a very high bar.
Yeah, it is. And again, maybe if I was living in those communities, I would very much want that to be the rule, depending if, something I didn't like rolled in. So that's a thing. And I think I skipped a question. I did. Also from Corey, who asked about the fascist thing, he wanted to know, why do you hail your own church that's a cult red flag? Is it? I don't know that it is. I don't think I've ever heard someone. This is the first time, and I've been in the AFA for I don't know, 15 years or so, and I've been around the AFA for a lot longer than that. And this is the first time I've heard that particular concern raised. I'm unaware of other cults that do that, to where that's like a stereotypical, like, oh, red flag for cultism. I had not heard that before. We hail our own church because we are the church of the Aesir in Midgard, and our church is literally defined by our mission to pursue loyalty to the Aesir and to enact their wishes and worship them in Midgard. Our church is our religion. Hailing our religion is hailing our loyalty to our gods. So I think it's really congruent with that, but I've never heard that it was a particularly, cult red flag kind of thing to do. Cliff, are you familiar with that particular allegation?
Well, I don't always make friends when I come on this show. I think it's kind of a silly question, Corey. No offense. I just think it is, because all religions are cults. There is a cult aspect to all religious practice. And if it doesn't have that, it's not religion. I don't understand. So in that regard, I don't understand the question. And it is common in other churches to do this. For example, I was raised Catholic, and they regularly petition saints, especially Saint Mary, the Mother of God, to pray for the church. people will all, and I don't know that it's any different from saying something like "God bless the USA." I mean, to ask for the divine to bless the work that the people are doing here on Earth is a very common and natural thing to be done. And if it's the word hail that is in question, Matt talked about this at pretty good length earlier. When you are hailing something, you are wishing it health, you are wishing it to be whole. That's what that means. So it would seem very odd to me if we did not do that. If anyone wants the Asatru Folk Assembly to be successful, it should be our own congregation, and we should beseeching the gods to bless our work and to help us continue it.
So, I mean, I think this is very much connected to the way of thinking with his first question, because it does the name calling thing. Like, we've evolved fascism to mean something different. I don't think that Elsie would have referred to herself as a fascist at the time. Just wasn't what was continental. Like, in England, there was a pronounced fascist movement, and certainly in Italian territories, that would have made sense. It's not the term that she would have identified with. It's one of those, it's like a government that you like is an administration. A government you don't like is a regime. They mean the exact same thing, but we vilified one. A cult is religion that you don't like, whereas, church or faith or religion is religion that you think's okay. It's weaponized language that's unfortunately really common in chaotic social circles. But again, I don't think it's a dishonest question. I think that's unfortunately how a lot of our young people think in the world today. So, question for me: when is the next time I'll visit Sigerheim? I don't know. I was really hoping maybe in December, but I'm not sure. Very disappointed that I didn't get to go out for Sigerblot this year. That was, my flight was on that one day that all of the plane reservation software crashed. I was stuck at the airport for like 9 hours and never made it out of Reno. So I wanted to. I was really looking forward to it. I love that place. Soon as I can, it's the best answer I've got. I was trying to figure out something for December. I still think that would be cool. I don't know, but as soon as I can, I would love to be out there. And then follow up in the same deal. Follow up question: will there be an AFA House of Gains built on the property someday? That's one of the dreams. Now, I've located pretty close. It's still about 45 minutes, but it's worth it. It's a really good gym in Cookeville. That's cool to go to if you live in and around Sigerheim. It's probably what we're going to be doing initially. But yes, I've absolutely looked into the idea of, building a gym on there somewhere. Like ideally a gym / dojo would be awesome. But we'll see. I think that's low on the priority list. We have a number of things that we need to accomplish there first, but I think that would be great. I'd love to see it there. If you want to come on out to Sigerheim and help make that happen, that's, many hands make light work. We'd like to do that, or heavy work in that situation.
There will be plenty of physical work to be done before that happens, though. So there will be gains happening there one way or the other.
It's humid. It's Tennessee. There'll be sweat regardless. Wolf Throne, Matt, can you sing the Thor Gayatri mantra? Om Odin Patraya Vitmahi Vajrastaya Dimahi Tano Dona Prachodayat. Om. I think, if I remember it correctly, it's been a really long time. Will Freyshoff, this one's for you, Cliff, will Freyshoff have something for Freya, like a grove or something?
Absolutely. A grove would depend on a lot of those details about property that we don't know yet. If there's exterior green space where we can do that, I think that would be fantastic. But there will definitely at least be a shrine to Freya present somewhere on or in the premises. That's really important to Githia Katie and to me, to make sure that that happens. So what the shape of it exactly looks like, how small or how magnificent it is yet to be seen. But yeah, there will be a place for devotion to Freya somewhere in or around the temple.
So, and rest assured, a Hoff to Lady Freya is in the planning. It is several of them out. I'd have to stop and math. I think it's 10 Hoffs from now, like the 10th Hoff from now that we build or that we establish will be to Lady Freya.
Number 14, right?
Number 14, again, the quicker we get these things rolling, the quicker we will get there. But I'd love to see that in my lifetime. I will work tirelessly the rest of my life to make sure that happens. Hopefully we get there first, and then I got to find other Hoffs to start making happen. But yes, that's absolutely going to happen. It's in the planning. Just can't give you a time and a date for it yet.
A long time. That's pretty far down the road.
Well, it'll be a few years, maybe a little more than a few. Question for Witan Cliff. What is the short version of how you came home to Asatru and the AFA?
All right. So short version is I was raised Catholic. I became a doubting Catholic. I asked questions based on the difference between theology class at Catholic school on one hand and the mythology classes in English and literature classes that were immediately after that. I wasn't satisfied with the answers, so I started looking into other things. I went to occult bookstores and picked up some Wiccan books. I picked up Ralph Bloom's Book of Runes, which is the closest to Asatru I got at the time, which is not very close, but it was at least runes. Picked up LaVey's Satanic Bible. I picked up a few books on Eastern religion and wasn't really satisfied with what I found in any of them. So I became a very snobby, secular, humanist, atheist type for about a decade. Shockingly, that path is not ultimately fulfilling. Thinking of yourself as the center of the universe and that all the stuff happens simply for you to observe it, or that it's meaningless if you're not there to observe it, is really shallow. I know it sounds silly coming out of my mouth now, but it took me some time to get there. And when I was in that period of searching, again, searching kind of in reverse for community and for meaning after having expunged it from myself, I tried going back to Catholicism, actually. I went to several churches, went to some masses, trying to, reclaim what I had lost. And in the time I was gone, the church had changed to the point that it wasn't recognizable to me. All the different sex scandals in the East Coast churches and stuff had become public, and their attendance was down, and it just wasn't the same place that I left, which was fortunate. Also around the same time, I was becoming aware of the fact that my standing as a white man in America wasn't what it used to be. The things that I had, seen when I was raised, the things that that I had been taught that were right were starting to be undermined and eroded, and that didn't sit well with me. And I was fortunate enough to meet our folk builder Patricia Hall through mutual friends in that endeavor. And as soon as I knew that she was a folk builder, I didn't initially I kept bugging her to talk about the AFA once I knew who she was, because I knew about Asatru at that point. I'd kind of found her on the internet like so many people do, and was making my rounds with different heathen groups that were more or less serious, depending on which one we're talking about, but none of them really seemed like a good fit. And so I harassed Patricia into letting me start coming to things, and eventually I was fortunate that she vouched for me to come to Winter Nights 1 in the Poconos in 2012, and I still kicked the tires for about a year after that. I, am and was a skeptic at heart, so I wanted to be really sure about this Asatru folk assembly thing. Why was it the version of heathenry that I'd read about online that was valid compared to other groups that I'd read about, other people that I'd met? Fortunately, Patricia was willing to keep me around while I figured out where I stood and figured out what I needed. And a year later, I joined the AFA officially just before Winter Nights 2, because I really, anyone who knows me knows I like to think of things in a cycle of a year. And if I hadn't joined by the time I was at Winter Nights 2, then I don't think I was going to. It would be silly to be vouched for the first one and to have to be vouched for the second one. Then I'm just a hang around. So I joined. Initially, I joined, just to make good on the generosity that the AFA had shown me, and to have my place in the Asatru Folk Assembly. And then within a couple of years, I had signed up to be a folk builder and really had put all my chips in. Once I committed to the Asatru Folk Assembly, I was all in and was a lifer. But it took me a little while to come to that conclusion. I was a pain in the ass for Patricia and for Matt for those first several years, I'm sure. Hopefully it was worth it. Seems like Matt thought I was going to talk for longer and maybe has gone to take a break. So I'm just going to pull another question out of the queue here. Chris asked, is there a particular service or an agent we're relying on for our property search for Freyshoff?
So Cliff, let me interject first because it's anticipating a future question.
Okay.
We have a question coming up in the queue. If you look up the 10 signs of a dangerous cult list, do you think the AFA has any of those? If there is an authoritative list, like I'm not sure if that was a theoretical look up a list or if you have a specific list in mind. If you have a list and you give me the link, I can look. I tried to Google what you asked, and there's a bunch of different lists of stuff, but none of them look like exactly what you're referring to. So if you could get me the list or a link to it, I can answer your question a little bit better. Back to you, Cliff. Sorry about that.
No worries. And now you've got me looking for that list too. I found one that's 12 long, so that'll do.
Yeah, I found a couple of different, like I'm trying. I'm just not finding exactly what matches it perfect.
Yeah, I mean, for me, real quick, I'll just tease a little bit of the answer. We can go into it because I'd like to go through the whole list. That'd be a lot of fun. But for me, the red flag for a harmful cult, if we want to qualify it, has been if there is some sort of requirement or coercion to cut off your own family. That's unhealthy. The Asatru Folk Assembly would never do that to anyone. So that's always been like the clear one to me, where, if we're not kidnapping you, we're probably okay. And we're happy to have friends and family come check us out. One of my friends did that when I first started hosting things. He wanted to see what the heck was going on, make sure it was okay. We've had plenty of members or prospective members bring their mom or their dad or another friend along, just so they could see what this strange and scary to them thing that their loved one is getting involved in. And I respect that. We should watch out for our friends and our families, and we've got nothing to hide that way. So they're welcome to come along and see what we do. Absolutely. Usually they're pretty impressed too. Unless they're like real hardcore Christians, then they might be a little spooked by it. But I can understand why. If they're devout Christians, we should be a little spooky to them.
Yeah.
And as far as the question that Chris asked, is there a particular service or agent we're relying on for our property search for Freyshoff? Not at this time. It is always possible that we'll reach out to a real estate agent when we zero in on like a particular county. Real estate agents don't really like to search like statewide. I know that because I tried to get one to do it when I was moving in Pennsylvania, and I drove her completely mad because she wanted to know where we were going to move. And I just kept saying, well, west of the Susquehanna River, which is 2/3 of the state of Pennsylvania. It's a pretty big field. She wasn't going to go driving around counting that stuff all for us, so we had to do it on our own. But we do use various commercial real estate websites to look for the what is it called, special use properties, I think is the term that they have that churches qualify under when you're looking for them on those sites. Nothing secret. It's like the Remax site, like what's Crexy. Matt mentioned Crexy. There's a few others. I can't rattle them off the top of my head, but commercial real estate websites is what we're looking at now. And as we get closer, we'll probably, if they'll do business with us, that's always a thing that we, sometimes have a challenge with. They might not want to have anything to do with us, but if there is someone that will, we'll reach out to them.
Yeah, we're up for whatever. I usually look on LoopNet, Crexy, City Fleet. Usually those overlap. Sometimes some of them have something the other one doesn't have. But I Google churches for sale, Ohio or Pennsylvania, and then I redraw the little geographical circle of where I'm looking in. And then I sort by price, lowest to highest, and I see what we got.
I sort by square footage, highest to lowest.
So there's a lot of ways to do it, a lot of ways to organize it. But yeah, that's kind of where we start on looking. We wouldn't be opposed to. We haven't had a lot of luck with local realtors finding stuff, although that is what was in play to get Odenshoff way back when. Thorgan and Sheila used a local realtor to get that set up, and that worked out really great.
It's not a
if anybody's got someone, we're willing to accept referrals, or if any of our members are a real estate agent in Ohio or Pennsylvania and we just don't know about that, we'd love to have your help.
I think Nick had something to offer. What's up, Nick?
Yeah, I was going to say it's not a Hoff, but we did use a realtor to find Sigerheim.
Did we?
Yes.
I don't recall. Perhaps we did. Nick knows that we did. So there you go. There you have it. Has a just seeing if that list has materialized. I do not see it. I'm going to save that question until last in the hopes that the list will materialize. If not, we can kind of examine a random one that we find if you want, because I think going through it's kind of interesting. It's probably questions that maybe somebody has who's listening to this. Is there a strategy to reach more heathens? Ben, you guys couldn't see it was off screen. I did the little air quotes. But been Asatru since 2007, but just became a member this year. I know you've mentioned that word of mouth is huge right now because of the climate we find ourselves in. But is there a change in strategy warranted or being discussed going forward to reach more folk? Cliff, you got thoughts and feelings on this or anything to add to shed light?
Well, I think it always surprises me when there are people in paganism in general, which we don't view ourselves as part of, but I understand why others might. It always amazes me when people have not heard of the Asatru folk assembly, because if you Google Asatru or heathenry or Odinism or Norse paganism or Viking religion, we come up. It might not always be flattering things that are said about us, but we're mentioned in the main Wikipedia articles on these things. We're not like a secret society. And in a lot of cases, it's our detractors who have the most to say about us. So, we're happy to have people who are already aware of the gods and Germanic religion join us. I don't know if there's going to be a specific strategy to reach out to more people like that, because in my experience, most people who are, quote unquote heathens, and that is how it was in the question, by the way. It wasn't just Matt doing the air quotes. It is in quotes in the question. If they already are aware of our existence and haven't joined, they have an opinion about us already. Now, that said, we are happy to talk to anybody about Asatru, and including people that aren't of our folk, people who might not be eligible for membership in the Asatru Folk Assembly. We want people to know that we exist. We want people to understand what we believe, especially coming from us, that they have a correct understanding of it, rather than people saying that we're bad because whatever the list of reasons they might have would be. I'd be interested to know more from you about your personal experience in this. If you've been Asatru since 2007, I'm curious if you have only recently become aware of the Asatru Folk Assembly, or if you knew about us the whole time and there was just other reasons you didn't become involved with us, whether it was our reputation for good or bad, or whether it was, you looked at the website and there just wasn't a folk builder in your area or something like that. But I think we're best served reaching out to all of our folk, going to, local fairs. There's all sorts of like harvest festivals and stuff like that right now. I want for our people to be present there and representing us well to, to quote unquote, I'll put the real quotes real close together so you can see them, normal people. Not that Asatru are not normal people, we are, but I think it's a small pond to fish in. And we, there's a billion of our folk out there who deserve to know that Asatru is a thing, and that it's their birthright, that they should rightly be Asatru, that it's their natural religion. And if we limit ourselves to just like I'll be generous and say 1% of our folk who are interested in any kind of paganism, even if it's not like Asatru, would really hold us back in that regard. We're not going to exclude reaching out to people like that, but I don't think that would be the most efficient use of our resources to target that exclusively or specifically.
Yeah, so everything Cliff said, I would be curious, like Cliff also said, of Bony Rat, who asked the question of, what would have been effective to you? Where do you suggest? What do we do? I don't think it's an either or. It's all of the above approach. If we have something that we think is a fruitful way to reach out to people that are heterosexual white people that ought to come home to our ancestral religion, we're all for it. It's finding what that is that's useful and going there. We are as public as we know how to be. We're wide open. We operate 6 different websites. We're on YouTube. We're on all the social media that will allow us to be on advertising with as much volume as we can in that way. We try to reach out to whoever we are able to. As Cliff said, it's always really curious to a lot of us. And this isn't a right or wrong thing. Like we're not married to the habits of how we do certain things. What we're trying to do stuff is do it the right way and the most effective way. So if there's better ways to go or places we're not looking, we'd love to know, and we'd love to be able to access those. There is extremely small amounts of crossover between us and the pagan community. There's nothing there as far as commonality for the most part. As far as people that call themselves heathens and other people that either practice or claim to practice a form of Asatru, the simplest Google search says we're there. So I don't know how that audience is unaware of our existence. If any of them have questions, we're always, not only open to, but eager to answer questions and engage in conversation with those folks. But I don't know how people are genuinely not aware. And I know some are, but I also don't know of a quick way of reaching all of those people. And I wish there was. That's why we do talk about how word of mouth is so important, is we all have different circles that connect, that we have, folks we talk about in them. Whatever your hobby is, if it's model trains, if it's martial arts, if it's basket weaving, whatever you do has got people in it that would probably like to be here. If we get our voices out in all of those different circles, great. But yeah, we would love to have a better outreach to bring more of our folk home. And we're certainly open to ideas on doing that, but we haven't been presented any that are viable outside of what we're currently doing. But if you have ideas, we would love to hear them. So to the cult question, I'm looking back over here to see if there's something that I don't. Yeah, and just as a side note in the chat, it was mentioned, and this is something, the most effective tool that we have for reaching people is when large media outlets post smear articles about us trying to vilify us. That has been the greatest thing that we have had for recruitment, because the battle lines are drawn so starkly in this day and age that, if the SPLC says one thing, there's a lot of people that will immediately fall in lockstep, and there's a lot of people that will immediately do the opposite. So that gets us in front of a lot more eyes. But I have said this, and I mean it, we're not going to intentionally court negative publicity in order to get more visibility. That would not be the right thing to do. It wouldn't be the best way to bring honor and reputation to our gods, and it would be abusive to our members who don't want that type of attention up in their face. So we don't seek negative attention, but whenever negative attention comes our way, it does drive members here. So
they don't censor people talking badly about us, isn't it?
Yeah. They're very tolerant in one direction. So to the cult question, Nick found the same list that I found when I Googled it, but it's not really titled what the guy asking had his titled. So hope it addresses it. I don't know, but we'll go through it anyway because it's might be entertaining and or informative to people that might want to know. So Cliff, I'm going to pose these to you one by one. I will follow your answer of them, but I'd like you to take a swing at them first.
All right, game on.
Hold on, just got a link. You got one with 12 on it. You got
yeah,
one?
It's from this thing called You're Not Alone. It looks like it's from like people who have escaped cults.
Yeah, this one is a better list. Yeah, I think this is I don't know the best way to hit this. I think the one that you found is a better list than the one that we've got.
Two longer. I'll take 12 reasons we can refute 12 instead of 10.
I mean, some of them, I don't know.
I agree with some of them. I skimmed it. And some of them I have a problem with.
So, point 1, charismatic leadership. A defining feature of cults is their charismatic leaders who wield extraordinary influence over their followers. These leaders often present themselves as enlightened or possessing special knowledge, making them appear larger than life. Their charm and persuasiveness can be incredibly compelling, drawing people in and making them feel uniquely understood. Charismatic leaders use their magnetic personalities to create a sense of trust and admiration amongst their followers. They often position themselves as the sole source of truth and wisdom, discouraging critical thinking and independent thought. This unquestioning loyalty can lead members to overlook or rationalize the leader's more questionable actions or demands. These leaders are adept at exploiting their followers' emotional and psychological needs. They often promise salvation, enlightenment, or exclusive knowledge, appealing to those who are seeking answers or a sense of purpose. By presenting themselves as the key to fulfillment, they foster deep dependency and devotion. It's important to recognize the signs of charismatic leader to protect yourself and often to protect yourself and others from potential manipulation. Understanding the tactics they use can help you maintain a healthy skepticism and avoid becoming entangled in their influence. If you suspect someone you know is under the sway of such a leader, approaching the situation with empathy and informed guidance is crucial. Cliff, what is your thoughts on that?
I think it's kind of funny that charisma is bad. That's the assumption.
You have the Riz.
No, it's
as the kids say these days.
Clearly bad. I think that all successful organizations, churches, corporations, political parties have charismatic leadership. That helps motivate people. It helps relate to them. It helps, helps get people's attention. I think it's good for our priesthood to be charismatic. Other churches, Christian in particular, even use that term on purpose, that they want their leadership to be charismatic. Now, I think that the article points out rightly where if someone is exploiting their charisma to to exploit you, then that's bad. I would really, I cannot think of how the Asatru Folk Assembly would be doing that. And if someone had concerns about that, I would invite them to come to us directly about it, and we can figure out what's going on. But charismatic leadership in and of itself is, that's something that successful organizations, in particular churches, need. I can't imagine it another way.
I wouldn't. Do folks want a not charismatic leader? That seems lame. Yeah, I'm not going to defend against being charismatic. I wish I could flex greater Riz, but I'm working on it. The keys, and I don't. A lot of these lists come about by people that are anti-religion and that kind of been burned and are reacting to it. The point in the explanatory text is important. If the leader is using their charisma to emotionally manipulate people in a bad way to take advantage of them or something, and I'd certainly never want to have anyone feel like I was doing that to them. I can honestly say I don't consciously do any of that, and I would love to be more charismatic. I think being charismatic is awesome. I would like all of our leaders to be charismatic. I think that's a good thing. But, power is one of those things that can be used for good or for evil. And I think we try really hard in the AFA, and I try to surround myself with people that will tell me, what's what if I were to treat people badly in that way. So, again, this is the reason that I want Cliff to answer these first, because a lot of them are directed at, the leader of an alleged cult. So, I don't know what good my response to it is to y'all, but I'm going to try to anyway to the best of my ability. But yeah, I'm not going to be weak and beta to make people not think it's a cult. That's lame. And thinking that the leader has some special relationship with their gods or special wisdom or special whatever, I should hope they do. I don't think that we can think of a religious leader in history that doesn't have some degree of that. I think that that's kind of silly, and I don't think there would be religions if you didn't have leaders that had a special relationship with their god or gods. I think that's really important. Point number 2, isolation from family and friends. Isolation from family and friends is a common tactic used by cults to increase control over their members. By severing ties with loved ones, cult leaders can limit outside influence and criticism, making it easier to indoctrinate members with the group's ideology. This isolation can have devastating effects on an individual's mental health and sense of self. Cults often create an environment where contact with outsiders is discouraged or outright forbidden. Members may be told that their family and friends are a negative influence, or that they will never understand the group's true purpose. This creates a divide, making the individual increasingly dependent upon the cult for emotional support and validation. The process of isolation is gradual and can be subtle at first. It may begin with the encouragement to spend more time with the group and less with those outside. Over time, this escalates to complete separation, where members might be relocated to communal living arrangements, or be constantly monitored to ensure compliance. This isolation can lead to a deep sense of loneliness and helplessness. Without the support from the perspective of family and friends, individuals become more susceptible to the manipulations of the cult. They may not start to believe that the group is their only source of love and acceptance, further entrenching their commitment. Understanding the dynamics of isolation is crucial for those looking to help a loved one involved in a cult. It's important to remain a supportive presence, even if contact is limited. Expressing concern and offering non-judgmental space for dialogue can eventually help bridge the gap created by the cult. Reestablishing connections with family and friends can be a slow process, but it's essential for recovery. Encouraging activities and conversations that remind the individual of their life before the cult can help them regain their sense of identity and autonomy. What are your thoughts on that, Cliff?
Well, I want to promise everyone who's listening that if the Asatru Folk Assembly ever tells you to stop going to your mom's for dinner, you can tell us to go to hell. Because the whole concept of us trying to control your friendships or separate you from your family is laughable. We do quite the opposite, in fact. We want you to be Asatru among these people, because if they're of our folk, your family, obviously, and your friends, maybe not, they deserve to know who you are. They deserve to know that you're Asatru. They deserve to know that the reason you are a better person than maybe when they first met you, that's true in my case, the AFA made me a better person, is because you're Asatru, and because of the things that you've learned and experienced through the Asatru Folk Assembly. We don't tell people to leave their families in any way. we would look down on that. Life is complicated, so sometimes people do become estranged from their families for all kinds of reasons, but it's far from the ideal. We don't tell people to end any of their friendships. We all have friends and family who are Christian. Many people have friends who, are not of our folk, or coworkers who are not of our folk, and that is all perfectly okay. This is the real world. We're in the United States, most of us in the 21st century. If you have been in the military and serve with someone who, doesn't share our background, that doesn't mean that they didn't, risk their lives to protect yours and watch your back, and vice versa. We don't do that. We do have one thing where when somebody leaves the Asatru Folk Assembly, we will ask our leadership in particular to make sure that they no longer offer Asatru Folk Assembly services to those persons. And the reason for that is it is an act of compassion on our part, because we really want those people to come back. And the only reason that they can come back is if they're actually gone in the first place. They have to actually know what's missing before they can identify that and be able to consider returning on their own. We don't mandate that for our congregants, though. That's something specific to leadership, where if you are hosting an AFA event, it needs to be made available to AFA members or people who are interested in becoming AFA members, not someone who used to be an AFA member and is disaffected and now has gone to practice another religion, or is going to have a chip on their shoulder about the AFA and spread that kind of venom to other people who are new and are trying to get the best out of their experience with Asatru and the Asatru Folk Assembly. And I think it's a pretty reasonable position that we take there.
Yeah. This is a thing, and this will come up in other stuff. We don't force everybody to break friendships, but if your friend breaks their troth with our gods and with the AFA, then yeah, separate from those people. That's bad. Disloyalty is bad. Loyalty is good. I'm not going to apologize for that, but outside of that, no, we want everybody to interact with their friends and their family and do stuff and have a fulfilling life in the actual world. We talk about wanting to have our folks live close together. And we talk about wanting to go to, have people move to Sigerheim, but so we can have a community of people that share our values, that are, our big family. But it's never at the exclusion of community involvement. It's always been a really important thing to us to be actively immersed in and involved in the community. We don't build something worthy of our gods by trying to separate from the rest of the world and not interact with people. No, we're here and we deserve to be here. And we're part of communities. We're part of the places that we live. We want to be active and we want to be involved. At least as a church, individuals don't have to be if they don't want to be. But we look for opportunities to be involved in local charity stuff, in local community things, because we're very much part of the world that we live in, and we want to build our reputation amongst the communities that we're in. And we're really proud of the reputation we've been able to build in the communities that we find ourselves. That's something we pride ourselves on, and it's actually a really big priority with us. Control over personal lives. Cults exert control over their members' personal lives in a variety of ways. This control can be overt or subtle, but it's always aims to diminish individual autonomy and increase dependence on the group. Members may find their daily routines, relationships, and even thoughts tightly regulated by cult leaders. One common method of control is through strict rules and regulations that govern every aspect of a member's lives. These rules often dictate what members can wear, where they can live, how they should spend their time, and who they can associate with. The goal is to create a uniform, compliant membership that is easy to manage and manipulate. Cult leaders often use fear and guilt to enforce these rules. Members may be warned of severe consequences for disobedience, ranging from social ostracism to spiritual damnation. This creates a climate of fear where members are constantly anxious about making mistakes and eager to prove their loyalty to the group. Psychologically, this control can lead to a phenomenon known as learned helplessness. Members become so accustomed to having their decisions made for them that they lose the ability to think and act independently. This deepens their reliance on the cult and makes it increasingly difficult to leave. Recognizing the signs of this control is crucial for anyone trying to help a loved one in a cult. Encouraging small acts of independence and decision-making can help rebuild their sense of autonomy. Providing a safe space for them to express doubts and fears without judgment is also vital. For more strategies on how to support someone in this situation, consider reading additional resources on cult dynamics and recovery. Cliff, thoughts?
I'm trying not to laugh too much at this because it could be serious for someone. So we're a religion, right? So we have a certain standard of ethics and behavior as far as what we believe right action is, what we believe being noble people is. And that's about as far as I think it goes as far as control over personal lives. We do not in any practical way exercise control over people's personal lives. We do provide counsel and try to point people in the direction of what a good way to conduct themselves in their lives in general would be. I think that if someone were to accuse the Asatru Folk Assembly of creating a uniform and compliant membership, that's pretty funny. Anyone in our leadership knows that our membership is not of that particular quality of uniformity and compliance. And I mean, we love our members, but we do not have people that are all pointed in the same direction, wearing the same T-shirts on the same day of the week. That is not an accurate description of our congregation in any way. I just, helplessness is not one of our virtues. All of our virtues are pointed against things like helplessness. And,
no, this one's funny. And I wish our people weren't so
almost laughable,
hard-headed. But Cliff can tell you one of the other things. I wish people took more initiative. I'm always talking about that. We want to instill our values in our folk in a way that they can go out and have agency in their life to build the world they want and to build their dreams. We want people to stop being hopeless and to look up and find ways that they can build and do and achieve the things they want for their life and for their families. We want, yes, we would like loyal people that are within the AFA hierarchy and work with us instead of being hard-headed. But we really want people that are able to be independent and successful and accomplish things. Those kind of strong members help us build a strong church and help us be strong for our future. We want that. We want that example for our kids. Most all of our noble virtues are about developing that character and that ability to make good decisions for yourself and live the life that you want. If you're just a dirtbag and your personal life is completely egregious, we'll certainly try to counsel you towards something better. And if there's lines that you cross that make you a danger to the rest of our membership, then we'll part ways. But no, we don't want to go through your wardrobe and sort some things out. If we did, we would have a lot of work to do. Exploitation and manipulation. Exploitation and manipulation are core tactics used by cults to maintain control over their members. These tactics can take many forms, including financial exploitation, emotional manipulation, and physical abuse. Cult leaders often exploit members' vulnerabilities, taking advantage of their trust and loyalty for personal gain. Financial exploitation is a common practice in many cults. Members may be pressured to donate large sums of money, give up their personal assets, or work for free under the guise of supporting the group's mission. This not only drains members financially, but also deepens their dependency on the cult as they have fewer resources to leave and start anew. Emotional manipulation is another powerful tool used by cult leaders. They may use guilt, shame, and fear to control their members' behavior and keep them in line. For example, members might be told that leaving the cult will result in spiritual damnation, or that they will be betraying the group's cause. The emotional tactics can be incredibly effective in keeping members compliant and loyal. In some cases, physical abuse is also used to control and punish members. This can range from physical violence to more subtle forms of coercion, such as sleep deprivation or food restrictions. The constant threat of punishment creates an environment of fear, making it difficult for members to speak out or leave. Understanding these tactics is crucial for recognizing the signs of exploitation and manipulation in a loved one's involvement with a cult. If you suspect that someone you know is being exploited, it's important to approach the situation with care, offer support. Providing information about cult dynamics and resources for help can empower them to seek a way out. Cliff.
Well, we don't starve people, so we actually give food away. So there goes that one.
I don't slap people around.
Nope, I've never seen it. So if you do, you're very, very tricky about it. The rest of it, though, as far as, this whole concept of volunteerism and donating to a cause that you think is worthy somehow being exploitive it's ridiculous, and it can describe so many organizations. Again, like all churches do that. All political parties do that, no matter what their beliefs are. It's just such a
every charity that I know of does that.
I don't understand how any kind of a nonprofit organization is supposed to function if people don't donate money to it.
No, it's like leaders shouldn't have charisma. What?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of these, and I'm having fun with this. I think that a lot of these are very like hyper. The point of view of the people who write this is like hyper individualistic and completely anti-authoritarian of any kind. Like these people are all mad at their parents who wrote this.
No, they're very damaged atheists that have daddy issues. That really seems to be a theme in this. But hey, I said, okay, so Cliff and I are having fun with this. There are real cults in the world that treat people really badly and that take advantage of people and that hurt people and that do really bad things. That's serious, and we don't want to pretend that it's not. The details really matter. And I think that's the serious reason that we are going over this list, in case and when we encounter those things, to assure people that that's not the case in our situation. But we do recognize there are really bad situations, and we're not that, and we don't ever want to be that or have people think that we're that. Like, I talk about this a lot from time to time. We have, and I think this brings up kind of interesting topics to talk about. So one thing that some of our members that seemingly have their life together better than others always want us to punish people or to enforce, really strict rules when they think that somebody did something wrong. That's not our job and what we're trying to do. What we are trying to do is, it's funny, and I think it is beautiful how often in this show Earth is at work and things come full circle back to previous conversations. So the root of holy is to heal and make things whole. Our people suffer from soul sickness, and we've got a lot of really broken people. Our job as a church is to help those people heal. Unless they're doing something that is so bad that it is dangerous or it hurts us as a church, we want to help heal individuals and help heal families. We don't do that by trying to starve them or by me beating them or whatever the examples of that. No, we want to heal people, and that has a lot of it's a longer process, but no, that's really important to us. The other thing is, and this is important too, is we try to work with people who are in a financial spot to help them be more successful. We want a big thing in the AFA is winning. And it's not that we just want the AFA to win. Certainly we do, but we want our members to win personally and as a family. And it's funny because I've had a conversation with two of our Gothar today about 3 different members trying to help them get more financially viable to where they're more able to take care of themselves and their family and not always dealing with the stress of living paycheck to paycheck. We want them to be financially healthy. Yes, we really appreciate donations, absolutely. And we really appreciate people donating their time to work for us or to, give us their services for free so that we can build things. But we want to build strong people that are economically, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually healthy. And we're really committed to that. We work very hard to do that.
I just want to add,
please.
We're having fun with it.
Yeah.
The part that I think that we think is fun about this and that we're having fun with is the implication that the Asatru folk assembly is somehow a dangerous cult. Obviously, I think we recognize that, actual dangerous cults like the People's Temple or Heaven's Gate are very bad and have harmed people's lives. But the leap to, accusing the Asatru, because that's the implication when someone says cult these days, right? That's what they think of. They think of harmful cult like Jim Jones and the People's Temple or Heaven's Gate, where like it ends up with everyone dying, right? The accusation towards the AFA that we are a cult is that's what I find so humorous, that we're so different from those.
I have to bring it up. So the Heaven's Gate thing. Watched a documentary on Netflix about that recently. I feel really bad. So that was in 1999, thereabouts, late 90s. And that ended in a mass suicide. And there was a guy that one of the requirements was at the end, they started being like gender neutral and castrating themselves and trying to be androgynous. And this guy couldn't go through with it because he was having impure thoughts about the ebony soul group In Vogue. And because he could not reconcile his lust for In Vogue with the tenets of the Heaven's Gate, he didn't participate in their mass suicide. And he spent the last 25 years being sad about that. So there's real damage to people sometimes. So just an interesting anecdote I felt I needed to throw out there. You're welcome. Pressure to recruit others. Cults often place so before we get to that, one of the points they made about exploitation manipulation. For example, a member might be told that leaving the cult will result in spiritual damnation or that they will be betraying the group's cause. Well, duh. If you're in a serious religion and you leave that religion, the thought that might have spiritual consequences and that might be betraying the mission of the church you're part of, that seems self-evident.
Which church does not have that?
Yeah, that's kind of silly.
There may be different levels of seriousness in different churches, but they all have it.
Yeah, of course. Pressure to recruit others. Cults often place significant pressure on their members to recruit others. This recruitment drive serves several purposes and increases the group's influences, provides new sources of income, and reinforces a member's commitment to the cause. The process of recruitment can be intense and manipulative, putting members in a difficult position. New recruits are often seen as a validation of the group's mission and the leader's authority. Members are made to feel that their worth and standing are directly tied to their ability to bring in new followers. This creates a competitive and high-pressure environment where recruitment becomes a primary focus. Tactics used for recruitment can vary widely. Members might be encouraged to use their personal and professional networks to find potential recruits. They may be trained in specific techniques to persuade and manipulate others using the same psychological tactics that were employed on them. This can include love bombing, presenting the group as a solution to personal problems, and creating a sense of urgency and exclusivity. The pressure to recruit can lead to strained relationships outside the cult. Members may alienate friends and family by constantly trying to recruit them, leading to further isolation and dependence on the cult. This recruitment pressure can also create ethical dilemmas for members who are uncomfortable with the manipulative tactics but feel unable to resist the group's demands. Recruitment efforts are often accompanied by the promise of reward or status within the cult. Members might be told that their successful recruitment will lead to a greater spiritual enlightenment, higher position within the group, or special privileges. These incentives make it difficult for members to refuse participation in recruitment activities. It's important to understand the intense pressure members face to recruit others when trying to help someone involved in a cult. Providing a non-judgmental space where they can talk about their experience and feelings can be a critical first step in breaking the cycle of manipulation. Recognizing the signs of recruitment pressure can help you better support a loved one who may be involved in a cult. By understanding the tactics used, you can offer informed advice and resources to help them make an informed decision about their involvement. Cliff.
So, we do want our members to tell everyone about Asatru, and we want them to tell every one of the white people in the world that they should be Asatru. We don't want them to manipulate it into it, though. And I think we've been really open about that. We don't want to trick people into being Asatru. We want them to see that they should be Asatru if they are of our folk. And for those that aren't of our folk, we want them to know that Asatru is our native religion, and to better understand us so we can better understand them. Of course we want to bring new folk back to Asatru, but we don't manipulate them to do it.
Yeah, excuse the term, but the devil's in the details on these things. If you're part of any religion and it benefits your life and you sincerely believe in it, of course you're going to try to get others to be involved and bring others in. Yes, we want to recruit people because it's the right thing to do, but we don't want to trick anybody. Never want to trick anybody. And that's been explicit the entire time I have been involved, certainly. That's very important. We don't ever want to lie or manipulate or trick anyone into things at all. And I've tried really hard to be as transparent as possible in order to avoid that. Because we don't want somebody as a member that doesn't fully understand who we are, what we believe, and share that in common with us. We don't want to, not trying to trick anybody and make anybody be here who doesn't want to be.
I think it's worth pointing out too, like, we don't want people to annoy people either. Of course, talk to your mom about Asatru, let her know why you're Asatru, and let her know that she should be Asatru too. And then if she doesn't accept that idea and wants to keep being Christian or whatever else that she's doing, let it be for a while. Don't ruin your relationships over it, because it's just not productive. It'll make you less whole, less healthy. It'll be damaging in your life. There's no reason to do that. I think an interesting point of detail as far as Asatru and like modern Asatru history and culture is that there had been this idea that Asatru was a religion that was not missionary, that did not proselytize. And that is one, I think they're wrong, but that is one area where I could see people that are in heathenry that view the Asatru Folk Assembly as a cult. Maybe that's the angle they're coming from, and that we do view it as our mission to share Asatru with the rest of our folk, whereas others are content to, I probably won't say this nicely, not good at that, are content to be closeted in their Asatru and not share the thing that's most important to them in their lives with other people who deserve that. And that's either cowardly or selfish. It probably depends on the detail. Yeah. And it's definitely wrong.
Absolutely. 6, us versus them mentality. Cults often foster an us versus them mentality to strengthen the bonds within the group and isolate members from the outside world. This mentality creates a sense of exclusivity and superiority among members, making them feel special and chosen. It also serves to demonize those outside the cult, creating a clear division between the good members and the evil outsiders. The us versus them mentality can be extremely powerful in maintaining control over members. By portraying the outside world as dangerous and hostile, cult leaders can discourage members from seeking help or questioning the group's practices. This fear of the outside world reinforces the members' reliance on the cult for safety and support. Cults often use languages and rituals to reinforce this mentality. Special terms, chants, and behaviors that are unique to the group create a sense of unity and differentiation from outsiders. This shared identity strengthens the group's cohesion and makes it harder for members to leave, as they feel they'd be losing a significant part of themselves. The us versus them dynamic can also lead to a heightened sense of paranoia and suspicion. Members may be encouraged to report on each other and be constantly vigilant for signs of disloyalty. This creates a climate of mistrust where individuals feel they can only rely on the group and must always be on guard against outsiders and even fellow members. Understanding the us versus them mentality is crucial for anyone trying to help a loved one in a cult. It's important to offer it. I'm just going to leave out the last paragraph of all of these because it's exactly the same. Cliff,
the one how to get help paragraph, how to be understanding. Yeah, I mean, Inengard and Utengard are fundamental concepts in Asatru. Like there is an us and a them.
Or any group you're a part of, or any religion that I've ever heard of.
Absolutely, and it's true for families. Like I can identify who is in my family and who is not. That doesn't mean the people that are not in my family are bad, but there's a distinction there. So the fact that we can see the world as it is, because animals do this, most other peoples in the world recognize this is true, that there are in groups and out groups, within animal species, and certainly between them. That's the natural state of affairs. I don't think that we demonize those that are not in the Asatru folk assembly or those who are not our folk, but we do have clear boundaries, and that's reasonable because so does every other living thing.
Yeah, the only part I see in there that's objectionable that I'm not like, yeah, of course we do, is the try to make people rat each other out or whatever. One thing we talk about internally a lot is when you join the AFA, you're in a frith relationship with the other AFA members, and a part of that is extending a certain amount of trust, a certain amount of grace, and like giving people the benefit of the doubt. We talk about that a lot. It's our obligation to other members to assume, when in doubt, when you don't know, to assume the very best of intentions and go from there. Now, don't be willfully ignorant when you know something's not true, but always try to give people the benefit of the doubt that are in our in-group. That's part of the benefit of being in the in-group, is that you have a certain amount of trust. And we're even willing to extend that trust when it may not be. We want to give people opportunities to be successful until we know that they are doing us wrong, or until we know that they are bad people. Now, we don't do that to the point where it's dangerous, but we certainly do that to the point where we give people a chance, even when, the odds are they're probably a dirtbag. We still want to give them a chance to succeed, because that's important in our in-group. So I think we go the opposite direction on that than the article would suggest. Were we a dangerous cult? Which we are not. So financial exploitation. Financial exploitation is a hallmark of many cults. where members are often pressured to contribute large sums of money or assets to the group. This exploitation serves to enrich the leaders while increasing the financial dependency of the members, making it harder for them to leave. Cults employ various tactics to extract money from their members. These can include mandatory donations, special fees for advanced teaching, and requirements to give up personal assets. Members might be encouraged or even coerced into handing over their savings, property, and other valuables, believing that their contributions are essential for the group's mission. One common method of financial exploitation is the promise of spiritual or personal rewards in exchange for donations. Members may be told that their financial contributions will lead to greater enlightenment, spiritual advancement, or other intangible benefits. This promise of a better future can be a powerful motivator, especially for those who are already deeply invested in the group's beliefs. Cults often create a culture of guilt and obligation around financial contributions. Members may be made to feel that they are not truly committed to the cause unless they are willing to make significant financial sacrifices. This guilt can be compounded by public shaming or pressure from other members, making it difficult for individuals to resist the demands for money. The financial strain placed on members can have severe consequences. Many individuals end up depleting their savings, going into debt, or losing their homes as a result of their involvement in a cult. This financial instability further entrenches them in the group, and they have fewer resources to support themselves independently. Understanding the extent of financial exploitation is important for helping someone involved in a cult. Providing practical support such as financial advice or assistance in managing debt can be a crucial step in their recovery. Cliff, thoughts?
Well, I mean, we do have the gall to ask our folk to contribute to the Asatru Folk Assembly. We ask for a minimum of 1% of Hoftaler, which is a tithe for anyone who's not familiar with that. The Christians ask for 10. So I think we're pretty conservative in that regard. We also have methods of donations that are even less than that. We certainly aren't enriching ourselves. All of our Gothar and folk builders are unpaid, except for our Alshir Gothi, who receives a salary that is far below poverty level in the United States. We do charge for tickets for our larger events so that we can afford to do wild and crazy things like feed our guests. We need to buy the food, so that's where money like that goes, and into the travel expenses for our Gothar to be present there to perform the religious services that are expected, what the events are actually for. Our finances are geared almost exclusively towards the maintenance and establishment of our Hoffs and the actual practice of Asatru through events. We don't charge anything for our members' children to participate in the Asatru Academy. Most of our events at our Hoffs that are not the big national ticketed events, where where 6 meals are included, are either potluck or are just provided to the folk for free. We have our folk services program where when our folk are down and out for any reason, job loss, a medical issue, whatever else, some kind of a disaster like a flood or a fire or something like that, we'll raise money for them and give it to them, no strings attached. In fact, we have a policy of not doing loans. We will give people money, but we will not loan them money for both reasons of ethics and legal complications. The idea to me of the AFA being financially exploitive is kind of ludicrous, because we ask for so much less than what contemporary churches ask of their congregations. Now, I mean, that said, of course, we will accept more if someone is, of great means and great generosity, and they want to help advance the mission of the Asatru Folk Assembly. Because of that, we will accept as much as someone is willing to give us. But by and large, our members stick to the guidelines that I just described, and we're very grateful for that. But exploitation financially is, if we were financially exploitive, we would see a lot more.
Off today.
Yeah, exactly. We would have more and fancier Hoffs for certain. I like our Hoffs. I like them, but they're not gold laden at this point. So
not yet.
Not yet. We'll get there, but we won't exploit people to do it. We'll get there because
we want
converted our folk back to Asatru, and they will be
contribution is really important, and that's part of commitment, is being able to share. That's one of the cool things about the Hoftoller, and it being at minimum 1%. There are people that give more. I've heard of people giving 5, even 10%. We appreciate that. We don't want to twist anybody's arm. That's not what we're trying to do at all. And we want Hoftoller is awesome, because if you're a bajillionaire, then we're all getting rich off it. Cool. We're sharing and we're all rising together. But if you're barely scraping by, cool, then we all deal with that too. And maybe your 1%'s literally like $1. That's not where we want it to be, and we need to work on that if that's the case, because something's going wrong in your life and you're not whole if that's the case. But the daddy issues in this article are strong, and the idea that contribution to something is bad is silly. But we would never want to exploit people or put them in a bad spot. And like I said earlier, we try really hard to help counsel our people to get in a better spot financially if they're struggling. It's important. We don't want financial stress it's literally deadly with stress, but it kills relationship. It hurts families. It's really hard. So we try to counsel. We spend a lot of time as Gothar trying to counsel our people into a better financial position. Point 8, use of fear and intimidation. Fear and intimidation are powerful tools used by cults to maintain control over their members. These tactics can create an atmosphere of constant anxiety and vigilance, where members are too frightened to question the group's practices or consider leaving. The use of fear ensures compliance to deter dissent within the cult. Cults may employ various forms of intimidation that can keep members in line. They can include threats of physical harm, emotional abuse, or public humiliation. Members might be warned that leaving the group will result in severe consequences, such as divine retribution, social ostracism, and even physical violence. The constant fear of punishment creates a sense of helplessness and dependence upon the cult for safety. Intimidation tactics are often coupled with demonstrations of power by the cult leaders. These displays can be symbolic, such as rituals that emphasize the leader's authority, or practical, such as enforcing strict rules and meting out of harsh punishments for disobedience. The goal is to instill a sense of awe and fear, making members believe that they are under constant surveillance and control. Fear can also be used to manipulate members' perceptions of the outside world. Cult leaders might exaggerate or fabricate threats from external sources, convincing members that they are under constant danger. Only the cult can provide protection. This creates a closed environment where members are too afraid to seek help or even think critically about their situation. Cliff.
Well, I mean, I don't even know what methods, if we hypothetically would do this, we could even employ. I mean, you could impress people with some bench presses as a display of power, I suppose, Matt. Leave, I'm
gonna come beat you up.
Yeah, no, it's a thing. I mean, I don't know. I can't.
We'd have a lot more members.
We do not intimidate. We do not intimidate people, and I can't imagine anyone being afraid of the Asatru Folk Assembly. It's I mean, I guess one thing that it talks about how, that there could be social shame if people aren't in the cult or something like that. And we do support shame culture. If someone is behaving badly, we do encourage our people not to ignore that and to treat them accordingly. But we don't remove them from our church for things like that. We were talking when we were talking earlier about controlling people's personal lives or something like that. Like when people fail the ideal, or when they fall short of the ideal, which can happen in many ways. Maybe they're an alcoholic, maybe they have a drug problem, maybe they were unfaithful in their marriage. There's plenty of bad things that people can do, right? We don't kick people out of our church for those things. But there certainly can be a social cost. If you're caught cheating on your wife and the whole congregation knows about that, then don't be surprised if people don't view you as a very noble person or someone that they want to have around their families. But
there's natural consequences to behaviors. And yeah, social ostracism, if you quit, you're not my friend anymore. This is 100% of my life and what I do, and I'm loyal to our gods. If you cease being loyal to our gods and our church, then we're not friends anymore. But I want you to come back, and when you do, I'd love to be your friend again. We have that happen a lot. I'm always very happy to see someone who's made a bad choice and who's left the AFA come home when they decide that they did choose poorly and they want to fix it. I want to bend over backwards to do anything I can to help them fix it, assuming that it's within the realm of fixability. And there's very few things that aren't, but there are some. But we want to heal people. And I also don't want anybody here that doesn't want to be here. And I mean that, and I've said that, and I say it time and time again. I don't want to trick anybody. I don't want to force anybody. If you don't want to be here and you don't believe what we believe, then, please, you know where the door is. But we don't want that. We would love to help you be here. We'd love to help you work through whatever you're going through. And we'd love to welcome you back when you figure it out. But nobody's interested in forcing anybody to be here against their will. That's too much emotional time and effort spent for nothing. We want loyalty, and we want good, noble people standing loyal with us, not, captives as a source of economic exploitation or whatever. It's just that it's funny because some of these things are things we really do have internal dialogue on. Like we don't want that. We don't want to force people to do things they don't want to do. That's never been something we're trying to do at all.
I think a good example of that internal dialogue that most of our members and people watching this might not be aware of is when somebody informs their folk builder or our Gothar that they want to leave the AFA. We have a Gothi or a Githia reach out to that person. We always want to talk to them before we remove them from the member roles. And of course, sometimes people ignore that and there's never actually a conversation, and we can't do anything about that. That's on them. But, the goal of those calls isn't to talk them out of it. It is to first of all, understand the context of why they want to leave. Maybe there's been a miscommunication, or maybe, this hasn't happened in a long time, but maybe our folk builder gave us bad information about something, and they have another side of a story that they would appreciate being able to share with a Gothi or a Githia. They might want to voice their side of something. Maybe they actually didn't want to leave, and there was some kind of dispute that we needed to know about. And we want to make sure that they're okay. If there's something going on, when someone leaves their church, there's usually something going on in their life that's serious. Maybe it's something that they should be drawing closer to us for. Maybe there's something that we can help with. And sometimes it's just, the Catholic guilt got me. I'm going back to Christianity, and I'm going to be a Christian again. And, you know, of course, we don't agree with that. We don't think it's best for them, but we'll respect that decision. But that's something that we do that, you know, I don't know if that makes us a cult, because we care about our people and want to make sure that if they're leaving, that they are leaving for the right reasons, and that they've had a chance to speak for themselves on the matter. But that's one of those things that we do.
Elitist attitude. An elitist attitude is a common trait amongst cults, where members are made to feel superior to those outside the group. This sense of elitism fosters a strong group identity and reinforces loyalty to the cult. Members are often told that they possess special knowledge or abilities that set them apart from the rest of society. Cults cultivate an elitist mentality by emphasizing the unique nature of their teachings and the exceptional qualities of their members. This can create a sense of pride and exclusivity. To not have a sense of pride, making members feel privileged to be part of the group. The belief in their own superiority can justify their isolation from the outside world and their commitment to the cult's cause. Elitism can be reinforced through rituals, special titles, and hierarchical structure within the cult. Members may be given ranks or roles that signify their status and contribute to the group. These distinctions create a competitive environment where members strive for recognition and approval from the leaders, further binding them to the cult. An elitist attitude can lead to disdain for the outsiders and a reluctance to engage with different perspectives. Members may be encouraged to view those outside their cult as inferior, unenlightened, or even dangerous. This worldview can reinforce the group's insularity, making it difficult for members to consider alternative viewpoints or leave the cult. Cliff.
Here we go again, crazy cult with our rituals and our hierarchy, just like every other church that exists. I suppose it's not quite true. There are some churches in like Protestantism that don't have hierarchy, like the Quakers, I guess, are an example of that. But they're the outliers. They're not, they don't work the way most other religions do. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, having things like giving someone a role, I don't know. I always thought that was a good thing. You want people to be invested in something that they care about. You want them to be able to participate. I mean, we're a church, so rituals and hierarchy, I think, goes without saying. And, you know, as far as like thinking that we are better than others, I wouldn't say that. I do think that we're more fortunate, and that we're ahead of the curve compared with many of our folk who haven't returned to Asatru. And I think it's okay to think that, as long as it's not in a kind of chauvinistic kind of way where, you know, we're snobbish about it. If we view that enlightenment that we have being in truth with the Aesir as a duty, and that we are supposed to be uplifting the rest of our folk to the same, then it's a good thing.
So hierarchy's good. Having a sense of pride when you're doing the right thing is good. Titles that come with responsibility are good. Rituals are good. And we are special being in the Asatru Folk Assembly. But we want others to come be special with us. But yeah, that's a lot of that is silly and antithetical to what we believe in. Again, the people who wrote this have been very badly abused and are reacting out of that. And I'm sad for them that they're in the state that they're in. But no, don't be a jerk. I think that's solid advice all around. But no, holding yourself to a higher standard and living up to that standard and being part of a hierarchy to where you respect those who are above you in the hierarchy, that's order. That's the right way for us to function, and it's not, not something that I intend to apologize for. 10, punishment for questioning. Cults often implement severe punishments for questioning or dissenting against the group's beliefs or practices. This suppression of critical thinking is a fundamental tactic to maintaining control and prevent any challenge to the leader's authority. The fear of punishment ensures that members remain obedient and compliant. Punishments can take many forms, ranging from verbal reprimands to public shaming to even more extreme measures like physical abuse or forced isolation. These punishments serve as a warning to others, creating an environment where questioning is not tolerated and conformity is strictly enforced. Public punishment is a particularly effective tool. By humiliating dissenters in front of the group, cult leaders can reinforce the consequence of non-compliance and instill fear in other members. This public spectacle serves to discourage others from voicing their doubts or criticisms, ensuring a unified and obedient membership. The psychological impact of punishment for questioning can be profound. Members may internalize the belief that they are inherently flawed or unworthy if they harbor doubts. This self-doubt can make it difficult for them to trust their own judgment and break free from the cult's influence. Cliff.
Well, you've got the list of everyone who asked questions tonight, right? So we can punish them. We literally ask. I mean, we are answering questions. We're encouraging questions and answering them. You literally, you put that out regularly and clearly. Pretty much any time that you are doing any kind of public speaking, at every event where you do a Q&A. I mean, it's a Q&A, so obviously you're answering questions. We encourage our people to ask questions. We don't want people to be disruptive. We don't want people to take over one of our chats and become problematic. Sometimes things need to be put into a sidebar or handled in a one-on-one telephone conversation rather than spurred all over the internet. But we want questions and we want suggestions too. Questions and suggestions help to make us better at fulfilling our declaration of purpose.
Exhibit A, this conversation. So that really is the genesis of this. I have always welcomed questions, but we had one dishonest member that's kind of a jerk over on the East Coast that suggested, 2017 or something, that we don't like questions or can't question my authority or whatever else. I've really, ever since then, been hyper conscious of, no, I'm an open book. Please ask me questions. I've gone on, I used to do these monthly before VNS became a thing. I try to do them at all of our national events. I put my private information out for people to just contact me with questions if they don't want to ask them publicly. We're not trying to trick anybody. I'm confident that by asking questions and getting answers, that will strengthen people's faith and not, reveal the evil mask of whatever our scheme is. No, I want to answer questions openly and honestly so that people can be strengthened by the answers. And I found that, more often than not, that's the case. But no, we want our people to ask whatever questions they might have. What I hate is when they're too scared to ask a question, so they make assumptions based on not knowing any of the facts, but on some rumor or something. I hate that. If you ask me a question and you don't like my answer, or you fundamentally disagree, I can respect that and I can live with that. What is much harder for me to live with is when we lose people because they don't ask questions. That's something that's really tragic because that's a misunderstanding. Wind it down. We got 2 more to go. All right. Deceptive practices. Deception is the cornerstone of cult operations. Used to lure new members and maintain control over existing ones. Cult leaders often employ various deceptive practices to manipulate perceptions, hide their true intentions, and ensure loyalty from their followers. These practices can be subtle or blatant. But they always serve to maintain the leader's power and control. One common form of deception is the misrepresentation of a cult's beliefs and practices. New recruits might be presented with a sanitized or appealing version of the group's ideology, only to discover that the more extreme or harmful aspects once they are deeply involved. The bait and switch tactics ensure that new members are already committed before they fully understand what they have joined. Cults also use deceptive practices to create an illusion of success and legitimacy. Leaders might fabricate stories of miracles, achievements, or endorsements to enhance their credibility and attract new members. This false image can make it difficult for members to see the reality of the situation, and they are constantly bombarded with evidence of the group's supposed greatness. Manipulation is information in another, sorry, I'm having trouble reading, guys. I apologize. Manipulation of information is another key tactic. Cults often control the flow of information to their members, censoring external sources and promoting internal propaganda. This information control ensures that members only receive a one-sided perspective, making it harder for them to question the group's narrative or seek outside help. Deceptive financial practices are also common. Members may be misled about how their donations are used, with funds being diverted to leaders' personal gain rather than the group's stated mission. This financial deception deepens members' commitment as they believe they are contributing to a noble cause. Cliff.
I mean, I think one of the things that gets us in trouble sometimes is that we are so open about what our beliefs are up front. That's why people don't like us who don't like us. I mean, I think they're wrong about that, but at least they're aware of what our beliefs are. They may then go and, misconstrue them and go on and do their own deceptive practices with that. But no, we're real clear about what we believe and what our mission is and what we do with our fundraising. And we have the proof for it. You can visit our Hoffs and see what we're doing. You can go to our website and our declaration of purpose, the Asatru True Law Mall. It's all there, really clear. The statement of ethics saying who we are and what we're about. And sometimes people don't like that, and that's fair enough, but it's not deceptive.
So I think it's also a beautiful working of Earth that I have Cliff on while we're going through this particular exercise. This has been extremely important to both of us. Those of you who may not know, Cliff's been with me every step of the way since I've been Alsheriogothi. And one of the first things we did was try to clarify any possible, perceived deception that may have been lingering when I became Alsheriogothi. There was a time before I was Alsheriogothi where we'd been very PC on how we answered questions so as not to offend, but we got to a point where I thought that the non-offense was becoming unclear to folks about exactly where we stood on things. And as I've said before, it's really important to me that we're not tricking anybody and that everybody's in the right place. At that time, we had members with radically different ideas of what we meant about different things. It was really important to me to disabuse anybody of misconceptions so that they could be where they needed to be as close to immediately as I could. And I released the infamous White Babies post on Facebook that caused a huge uproar and a whole movement on the left against me or whatever. Something to the effect of, in the Asatru Folk Assembly, we appreciate our masculine men, our feminine ladies and our beautiful white babies or beautiful white children or something. And everybody lost their minds and there was this big outrage or whatever, but I wanted it very clear. And that's why you've heard me say on this many times, if you are a heterosexual white person, this is where you need to be. Because there was a time where that wasn't as clear to everyone. And I wanted to make it crystal clear because it's important. We had people at the time who didn't believe those things, who were members. And that's wrong to continue to have them and to take their donations and to have them be part of our group if we weren't clear about what we were doing and what our positions were. That wasn't right. And it was really important for me to clear that up. And I've tried to do that consistently since that day to this day with this program because it's really important. Cliff was a big part of that. He was a part in revamping how our statement of ethics and our declaration of purpose were written to where we were very explicit about what exactly we meant so that nobody was confused, because we don't want anybody to be confused. That's not what we're doing. We want people here who believe what we believe so that we're united in our purpose. We don't want to trick anybody. Last one, obsession with the leader. An obsession with the leader is the hallmark of many cults, with the leader is often viewed as an infallible figure deserving of absolute loyalty and admiration. This cult of personality is cultivated through various means, ensuring that the leader remains the central figure in the members' lives and thoughts. Cult leaders often portray themselves as uniquely gifted or divinely inspired, claiming to possess special knowledge or abilities that set them apart from ordinary people. This perception is reinforced through teachings, rituals, and the leader's own behavior, all designed to elevate their status and solidify their authority. Members are encouraged to see the leader as a parental or godlike figure. Goodness gracious, you shouldn't view the leader as a parental figure, often referring to them with daddy issues, something Cliff and I talked about earlier. Often referring to them with reverence and displaying unwavering loyalty. This deep emotional bond can make it incredibly difficult for members to question the leader or to consider leaving the group, as doing so would feel like a profound betrayal. The leader's image is carefully controlled and maintained through constant reinforcement. Stories of the leader's wisdom and benevolence and miraculous deeds are frequently shared, creating a larger-than-life persona that commands respect and devotion. Any criticism or doubt about the leaders is swiftly addressed and suppressed to maintain the leader's unchallenged authority. Obsession with the leader can also manifest in a member's daily life. They may be required to display an image of the leader in their homes, participate in regular rituals that honor the leader, and dedicate significant time and resources to activity that promote the leader's vision. This constant focus on the leader reinforces their central role and deepens the member's commitment. Cliff.
I'm going to have to put a picture of you up in the dining room now. Like, my grandma used to have JFK and the Pope. I mean, it's, again, because we're a church, some of this seems kind of ridiculous. Of course, clergy and of course the high priest should be looked at with reverence and with respect. And we do believe that our ordained clergy have a special connection and special duty to both the gods and the folk. That's the definition of a priesthood, I think. But I don't view it as a bad thing. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, there's the hyper individualism, the anti-family, anti-community nature of these particular authors seems really relevant. And this, to be fair, this is not the list that the original question came from. So perhaps the tone was very different in the list that was referenced. But Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember. I don't remember us doing anything to curate your image. I mean, you do that when you go to the gym and when you put on a nice shirt, but
yeah, I think this speaks really specifically to daddy issues of who wrote this. Hierarchy is really important. I understand how that sounds coming from me. I am not perfect. I'm by no means infallible. Got lots of things that I need to improve on and better myself on and try to work on all the time. I am divinely inspired. If I did not believe that, I wouldn't be doing the things that I'm doing. And I appreciate the loyalty that's shown to me by any of those who wish to be loyal and show that to me. I strive to be the best example that I can be for our church. And I do view myself paternally. This is my AFA family. And I do take on the responsibility of a father to that family. And I don't apologize for that at all. I don't curate my image by media control, but I try to do it by building a good reputation and being the very best I can be. But yeah, we believe really strongly in the cult of the hero, in building heroism and building ascended individuals to be the best that they can be. And I wouldn't be being a good leader if I didn't try to enhance my charisma, which was point one. And I don't know, tried to be worthy of the loyalty of our folk as point 12. I think those are really important things. And they're things that I'm proud of to the degree at which I succeed at them. But this is interesting, and I'm glad that we went through the thought exercise. I hope it's been informative or at the very least entertaining. We do have some more questions that have stacked up. The Wolf Throne. What do you say to the anti-whites in America who tell us to go back to Europe? That's not a thing. I don't hear that. I've never really heard that. That's really not a thing. Cliff, do you find that to be a thing in your spheres?
no. But if they did, I would just say no, because our homes. We've talked about this as far as like where is the homeland of the Aryan people and stuff like that too. You know, our lands, our countries, our homes are where we are. You know, by colonization, which I don't think is a dirty word, by conquest, which is also not a dirty word. Our ancestors worked and bled and suffered so that we could be here. And no, I'm not leaving.
Hi, I found you guys while just while browsing, so I'm not a member of your religion. Is Asatru a more niche version of Norse paganism, or would they be considered the same? Apologies if my terminology isn't accurate. Just curious. Cliff?
So I do think that the question probably does have terminology issues, which makes it hard to answer. We don't. All right. So Norse paganism. There are modern religious spiritual movements that identify themselves as Norse paganism or like Norse Wiccanism, etc. And Asatru is distinct and has nothing to do with those. Those are using Norse terminologies to talk about what's an entirely different religion from Asatru. But more academically speaking, you know, if we rewound the clock 100 years or something like that and use the term Norse paganism to mean Norse polytheistic religion, then yes, that is what Asatru is. So it really depends on what what Bashful the Bear means by that. If you're trying to associate us with like the quote unquote pagan umbrella that exists, like the people that go to pagan pride events or that you may have found on other websites, no, we're not them at all. But while we don't use the term paganism because it's it's pejorative and it's a term used by outsiders to diminish what our ancestors were practicing as their religion, it would be in the academic sense an accurate description of it, I guess is what I'm trying to say, but not the neo-paganism.
What Cliff said, it really is a nomenclature, like a terminology thing that's the Norse form of what the Christians would have referred to at the time as paganism is Asatru. People today who do not call themselves Asatru but do want to call themselves Norse pagan are not practicing that religion. They're practicing like Norse flavored Wicca more often than not. But it's not an inaccurate. No, it is our belief that if you are doing Norse paganism the correct way, you are practicing Asatru, then, now, forever. Wolf Throne, have you heard of Nordic aliens? There have been supposed sightings of technologically advanced 6 to 7 foot tall aliens with Nordic Aryan features. Cliff, what are your thoughts on Nordic aliens?
I have not heard of anything credible regarding Nordic aliens. I have seen things on stuff like Ancient Aliens or in the Stargate SG-1 TV series, but I don't think that's what the Wolf Throne is referring to. So no, should be my short answer. I haven't heard of them.
Yes, Wolf Throne, I am aware of people talking about Nordic aliens. So there's a really strange psychological gap that I acknowledge here. Most people, and I'll take this a step further. So most people, there's billions and billions of stars out there. There's got to be life somewhere, believe in aliens. A lot of those same people, when asked, like, cool, but do you think aliens visit Earth? Like, do you believe in alien sightings or whatever? No, that's ridiculous. And I get the logical distance between those 2 points of view. I also will stipulate people are seeing things. People see unidentified flying objects, or what is it now? Unidentified, unexplained aerial phenomenon, or whatever it is. So there's interesting stuff out there that I don't know about. The talk of these like bunch of different, really distinct alien races that we have secret agreements with, that people, it's a lot for me to extend belief on without some really good evidence of stuff. And I've seen no really good evidence about that. I've seen evidence that there are unidentified flying things that people are observing that exists. What those are, I don't know. I do hold out the possibility there's life from other in the galaxy that may come here. They might look like Nordic people. I don't know. But I've seen nothing credible to give me any strong belief in that being the case.
I'll just add too, I think it's useful. Like I used to be really into like aliens and UFOs because Unsolved Mysteries terrified me as a kid. It's like my version of Bigfoot for you. Something about Robert Stack and a picture of a gray up on that TV screen made me, I couldn't sleep. Probably also had to do with the fact that I was like 10 years old. But, it's like, read communion and was really interested in I forget the name of the person's story, but the one that A Fire in the Sky is based on the true story. I forget. I'll look up his name later, but that sort of stuff I don't entirely discount, but I've never seen anything to verify it. But I have seen what I would describe as a UFO one time. It was just like a light in the sky, and it moved real quick, and it turned 90 degrees, and I can't explain what it was. So it's unidentified. I don't think meteors make like sharp 90-degree turns, so I don't think it was that. But there was nothing Nordic or Aryan about it, and it could be my imagination. I mean, my friend was there and he saw it too, so I doubt that. But we could reinforce each other's confusion about something. But I don't think that people that think those things are necessarily like crazy or odd. I've never. I don't know. Are there time travelers? Those are questions that I don't have answers to, and that don't really have to do with Asatru.
So, but I've encouraged people to ask whatever questions they want, and I'll entertain it because it entertains me. So that's one of my favorite things to do if I'm trying to go to bed and I need something to fall asleep to, if I've got stuff on my mind or if I just can't fall asleep. I'll watch stuff about aliens or whatever because it entertains me, not because I buy into it, but it's something fun to have on in the background to fall asleep to. And I've used up all the ones on Amazon Prime that I don't have to pay for, and frustrates me. But there's a new batch out recently, so I think I got some more. What I wonder about, and this is something with all of these things, Bigfoot, other cryptids, aliens, all of this coast to coast AM kind of topics, they don't all need to be telling the truth. Just one person does. There could be a million hoaxers, but one guy's telling the truth makes it a thing. And I really don't know. I feel bad because one of the thing that's always fascinated me about this kind of topic, there are lots of kooks that are lying to you. But then there's some people that are not lying. I'm not saying I believe that their narrative is accurate, but I think they believe their narrative is accurate. And that fascinates the distance between what really happened and what they genuinely believe happened. That's fascinating to me. And I don't know what that is. I don't know if people have been abducted by aliens or not. I know there's a lot of people that have really similar stories. I don't know if those are implanted memories. And I don't mean like nefarious, but there's been phenomenon in psychological fields for a long time with regression therapy and hypnosis and other stuff to where it seems as though perhaps well-meaning medical professionals plant ideas in people's head that never really happened. And we've seen that about like cult practices, like satanic cult stuff, or people claiming childhood abuse that turns out never happened, or the alien abduction phenomenon. There's a lot of things that people have been manipulated mentally to where they believe happened to them. I think that's really tragic. When we start getting into like Nordic aliens, it starts being real specific. And so I feel more confident dismissing it. But I think there's some unexplained things going on. And if aliens are involved in some unexplained things going on, that's fascinating to me. And I don't write it off as impossible. I think Cliff and I both like sci-fi stuff. So it's a fun thing regardless.
I like strange stuff in general. Like kind of like what you were saying. If I can't fall asleep, I'll put any like alternate or fringe history thing on, whether it's Nostradamus or like is Genesis history. And I'm also true. I don't think Genesis is history, but I might be interested.
All those, yes, like the trying to find Noah's Ark stuff. There was one about what was it called? Something, anyways, about ancient Egypt with some strange things. Those are all fascinating. I enjoy those things. I don't really buy into all of them. Don't buy into most or any of them 100%, but I find a lot of them fascinating. Last
Y'all are
question.
strange. You know that?
A little bit.
I just don't get. I don't know. This is the thing I don't get.
It's a point of interest. Like, I don't devote a lot of conscious time to it, but if I need to just zone out on something while I'm trying to crash, that entertains me a lot. And I don't mean to just dismiss it as that. Like, I'll watch Bigfoot stuff. I really want Bigfoot to be a thing. Don't think that it is. I hold out hope that maybe it is, because I think it'd be cool, because I've thought that would be cool since I was little, but doubt that it is.
There's a lot more cameras in the world. The odds are going down every day.
So I'll revert back to this, and then we'll leave this topic for a second. But random hillbilly doesn't convince me, but like police officers on police recorded radio, or like Air Force pilots or NASA people, or that Pope dude that was part of the like English, what's his name? He was on like the English Ministry of Defense. Like, he was a high functioning dude that's out there, Nick Pope. Those kind of experts that are actually functional members of like legitimate authority things that are willing to say stuff, I find those guys a lot more compelling. But there's still some distance betwixt that and me buying into some of these things. That said, last question for tonight. Today is William Pierce's birthday. Any take on his religion, cosmotheism, was about the question is worded strange. Any take on his religion, cosmotheism, was about the evolution of human consciousness. Cliff, are you aware of cosmotheism? And if so, what are your thoughts?
So I'm aware of cosmotheism. I didn't have any idea that Dr. Pierce believed in it, and I'm not really sure about it as an evolution of human consciousness. My understanding of it was always that cosmotheism is basically that the universe is God and that God is the universe. And it's one of the things that I looked into when I, was leaving Catholicism. And, my take on it was more that it was, for me, this is, that it was equivalent to atheism, because if the universe is God, like, is the universe conscious, and does it matter? It wasn't compelling to me, at least not in a religious way. That was sort of where, it sort of led me down the whole atheism is enough because the universe is beautiful all on its own, even though it's also not beautiful. It's also really dangerous and cruel. But yeah, that's my take on it. I wasn't familiar with Dr. Pierce's part of it, but I'm not that familiar with Dr. Pierce in general, so that might be why. And then I know who he is and all of that. I just haven't read all of his works.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So yes, so Dr. Pierce, as I understand it, glommed on to what you are calling cosmotheism, which was cosmotheism for 200 years. And then he added like the idea of the Aryan Superman onto it. Like, as a function of that, the highest expression of evolution is like Aryan becoming of the Superman and realizing their cosmic implication or whatever. But to me, it always sounded like it did boil down to a form of atheism and like a philosophical Nietzschean kind of thing, and not really a religion. And I think it's really important for our people to differentiate the difference betwixt religion and philosophy. they are not the same. And a lot of people try to equate them, or they view religion from such a detached and impersonal perspective that they see them similarly. But religion is not it is active. It's not what you think. It's what you do with what you think. And that may strike some as strange. So a lot of people think religion is about belief. And this is funny, and it may sound odd or comical coming from me, but something that I think is a poignant description of it comes from the Bible, where it talks about it not being about what you believe, because the demons believe and shudder. Like, you can be on the other team and still kind of believe in the gods. But Asatru isn't about believing in them. It's about being loyal to them. Religion is about engaging divinity in a devotional practice, in the gift cycle, in our case. But it's about an active worship relationship process, and not a conception of how you conceive of the world or you conceive of the cosmos. They're really different. And the one can imply the other, and they can certainly work in tandem, but they're not the same. And I hope that makes sense. I don't think that the philosophy of Dr. Pierce's cosmotheism is the same as an actual religion, because I don't think it talks about, a devotional relationship with divinity, or a relationship with external divinity at all, but a kind of a personal empowerment divinity that I think inherently we all know is lacking. I don't think we would be looking externally if we genuinely believed that, it worked that way. But that said, it's not meant as a slap against or a disrespect for Dr. Pierce or any of his work. I think that that's a philosophy and not a religion. And I think that our people are better served religiously involved in a actual living, practical gift cycle relationship with the authentic gods of our race since the dawn of our folk, which is Asatru. So, Cliff, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This has been a longer and more exciting show than I thought it might be. I enjoyed our little side quest into examining the 12 daddy issues, complaints about cults and bad relationships people have been in. And thought it was fun, but I also hope it was informative and helpful to some folks who listened. Thank you very much for sharing the story of King Blót-Swein. I look forward to honoring him in years to come, remembering him and celebrating him on his day of remembrance, and his legacy and his story inspiring others. Make a last-minute plug for Winter Nights, if you would.
Yeah, please. If anyone's interested in attending Winter Nights, now's the time to register. We're in the late planning stages, and this is when you being registered really does help us. If you're in Thorshof North, you've probably already gotten a call from our folk builders. They've been on the case for a few months now. If you haven't gotten a call, you will. We're excited to see you there. The DCer and the Alfar Bloat are really special. We have Alshir Gothi Matt and myself and Katie and Witan Svein will be there. So we're looking forward to seeing you there. And like I joked about in the email that I sent out, but also I mean it because it's true. Your registration is your plate. So if you intend on being there, do us the favor of registering now so that we can have an accurate head count for what we should be planning for.
I want you there regardless. If you don't register, it means I go hungry, but that's okay. I can figure something out. Katie knows that I like the PB&Js, so she can hook that up, and I can make that happen while you guys are eating other food. We want everybody to show up. But yeah, the earlier you guys register, the better planning works. It's going to be awesome. I hope to see you guys there. Like I said earlier, thank you very much for joining us this evening, Cliff. Appreciate you guys and your questions. And we'll see you next week as Witan Svein and I go over the Alvismo. Until then, hail the Aesir, hail the folk, hail the AFA, hail King Blót-Swein, and remember, victory never sleeps.